Okay, I'll do the entire intro again. Hello everyone. Today I'll take a look at the Pauper Challenge Top 8 from this Sunday. So on the 15th of April, 14th of April, 15th of April I think was when the tournament was, and I recorded this on the night between Sunday and Monday. And yeah, if you participate in the tournament, you get access to all the replays, but these events vanish from the servers very quickly. So I had to take the time to record this video on the evening of the tournament so that we get to look at the footage later on before all the replays go away. And yeah, I want to review the top 8 matches now. And we so far don't have deck lists yet. Usually they get released on Monday after the tournament. I'm recording this on Tuesday, but the Magic Online decklist servers seem to be bugging out at the moment, so we don't have deck lists available yet. But we will obviously see what people played. And currently I will intend to present this in like a spoiler format where we get to see all the results of who won. I assume by this point everyone knows who won already. But if you prefer me to do this in spoiler-free format in the future, hide the results of each of the matches, hide who is going to be the winner at the end, then I'll see if I can improve on that production value in the future and like not show you these results. But yeah, Fran MTG won the tournament with Mono Blue Delver and beat Blue Red Delver in the finals. But we will be starting with the quarterfinals here first. And I think the first match that I looked at was Fran MTG, which is the eventual winner against Green Prinny on Tireless Tribe. So let's start with the video and see how those matches played out. Also, the recording speed of Magic Online is pretty quick, so if you want me to slow down the video a little bit, we can maybe do that as well. Like I have this in VLC, so I can theoretically like go to half speed or 2/3 speed or something to like change the quickness of how this replay plays. So let me know if it should be slowed down, but yeah, for now we'll just do normal speed, and then you can give me some feedback on whether it should be slowed down to be easier to follow. So Green Prinny on the bottom here, and the eventual winner Fran MTG on the top. And Green Prinny is on Tireless Tribe and starts by looking at his opponent's hand. Also seems to be intending to hide his deck selection by playing some snow-covered lands in his tribe deck to pretend like he's Blue-Red Delver for a little while, which is the only deck actually taking advantage of snow lands. Fran MTG starts pressuring here with Fairy Miscreant, and actually that's the first interesting spot here. Green Prinny played a lot of cantrips in the early turns, trying to set up, well, find the inside out Shadow Rift combo, of course, find the white source maybe, find the Tireless Tribe, and the protection to make sure that his Tireless Tribe can resolve. The most difficult aspect of this matchup is that it's hard to resolve a Tireless Tribe through a Spell Stutter Sprite, because you can't use your usual measures against counter magic, which is Dispel. The Spell Stutter Sprite can of course not be dispelled, and therefore it's difficult to fight through. So you need 4 mana available, and then you need to hard cast a Circular Logic on the Spell Stutter Sprite, and then your opponent needs to not have mana available to counter back. So resolving Tireless Tribe is very difficult. And what we saw here was Green Prinny played a lot of 1 mana cantrips, but had Brainstorm available on his own turn, but decided to not cast it and wait until his opponent's end of turn. So Green Prinny gave Fran MTG the chance to Spellstutter Sprite a Brainstorm. So usually that's a bad play. You want to avoid Spellstutter Sprite, of course, and not give your opponent value. It would have been very mana efficient for Fran MTG to do that. It would have been card advantage for Fran MTG to be able to Spellstutter the Brainstorm. But yeah, they were playing like a game of chicken here, because if Friend MTG taps out on his own end of turn to get the spell starter into play, then it's very easy for Green Prinny to just go Plains, Tribe, and then be in a great board position where the Tribe is on the board with 2 mana available to protect it. So pretty interesting play to make the play that is usually suboptimal, playing into your opponent's Spellstutter Sprite, but Green Prinny seems to be aware that Spellstutter Sprite is such a difficult card to beat and such a crucial card in the matchup that even baiting it out of your opponent's hand by throwing a Brainstorm away would be a good deal. Or at least he's aware of the pressure that is on Friend MTG to keep mana available here and not run out that Spellstutter. So now that mana is still open, he just goes for Augur of Bolas here on his main phase and has set it up with Brainstorm already, so there's a guaranteed hit, revealing Gush. But yeah, interesting dynamic that the baiting on end of turn is a good thing for Green Prinny. Friend MTG also goes for a Brainstorm end of turn, showing that he really wanted to have that mana available to counter something, but Green Prinny didn't really do anything that was worth countering. And then the very aggressive Double Delver follow-up, now letting the guard down in terms of counter mana available, but Green Prinny was unable to utilize that open, like that window of opportunity where Friend MTG didn't have counter mana available or only 1 mana available. And it's interesting that Green Prinny still doesn't seem too desperate here, because we know he has a Gush in hand and could have just tried to Gush to find a White Source and a Tireless Tribe and get those onto the board while Friend MTG's defenses were down. And considering he's facing Double Delver here and they're pretty much guaranteed to flip from the Brainstorm that has previously stacked Friend MTG's library, I'm kind of curious to know why Green Prinny didn't choose to go for a slightly more aggressive line of play, because now Friend MTG has a dominating board position with a fast clock, and gets to have counter mana available for it, so I think it might have been a spot where you want to like desperately Gush and see if you can draw into something to do immediately. But either way, Green Prinny's spot here is pretty difficult. And as we can see, these Delvers are going to transform, revealing a Ponder. A lot of damage coming in here. And now Friend MTG no longer has to commit anything to the board, not even casting the Ponder. Now there's the desperate Gush for that exact same reason. And he did now find Plains and Tireless Tribe, but this turn Friend MTG has the reactive mana open for the Spellstutter, which wasn't available the previous turn. And with the floating mana from the Gush, well, first of all, Green Prinny cycled through a Shadow Rift, so I assume that means he just didn't have the Circular Logic in hand and managed to draw into it with Shadow Rift. Otherwise, I don't think he would want to spend Shadow Rift there. Basically just cycling it on the Delver of Secrets to find another answer. And then with the floating Gush mana, he manages to Circular Logic the Spellstutter, which ends up resolving this Tireless Tribe, but now he's completely tapped out. Augur makes kind of an irrelevant attack, because it's not blocking anything. And another end of turn Brainstorm. And Vapor Snake gets the Tireless Tribe off of the board again, and second Vapor Snake makes it so this Delver of Secrets attack is actually lethal. So that was game 1 of Friend MTG versus Green Prinny, and now we jump into game 2. And the important thing here is Green Prinny and Friend MTG have actually switched sides in the layout now. Green Prinny is on top and Friend MTG is on the bottom. Not really sure why that happens, but that's just the way that Magic Online replays are set up. Once again, early cantripping as we would expect. And now Friend MTG does not have a 1-drop, which is already a lot worse for him, not being able to apply pressure immediately. And green pretty with no third land here after cantripping. And a very aggressive usage of Spell Stutter, which gets killed by a Piracy Charm. Piracy Charm, a nice instant speed way of destroying a Spell Stutter sprite and making sure that the fairy count is maybe too low to counter something. But green pretty very aggressively trying to keep the Spell Stutter off of the board here to avoid getting hit by a Ninja of the Deep Arch, for example. I don't think it's always who goes first with the sides, but maybe it's possible. I'll have to pay more attention to it if the player going first is always on the bottom. Well, no, I think the point at which players choose if they go first or not is after the point where they get seeded into their position. So I'm not certain if the replay even uses that. Because like the match can start and the players already have a position, and then after that they choose like if they want to be on the play or on the draw. I think it's just random. But it is annoying that it is random by some measure that changes. Like it could be alphabetical or something, and then it would always be fixed. Anyways. What was that? Oh yeah, I think from watching FriendMTG's games, he might have actually played a version of Mono Blue Devil with no Ninja of the Deep Arch. At least I've never seen him put one into play. And usually the deck lists have Ninja of the Deep Arch as a fixed card that is always in Mono Blue, and then some of them play Orgraf Brawlers to enable it, which is better against the more aggressive decks, but kinda clunky and expensive. And some of them play Spire Golem, which is better against the controlling decks because it gets a lot cheaper in the mid game and just harder to kill, can fly over. And yeah, but it's like more of a late game oriented card because you need to make more land drops for it to become cheaper. But those are usually the two different Ninja of the Deep Arch enablers, and usually Mono Blue Devil chooses one of the two, but never both of them. And from what I've seen from FriendMTG, I think he had access to both of them in his deck list, but no ninjas. And we see a lot of plays that his opponents make that are heavily built around preventing a ninja hit. For example, here, Piracy Charming down the Spell Stutter sprite on your opponent's end of turn really looks like he wants to stop a ninja hit. But I think it's possible that FriendMTG just didn't have any ninjas. And that would be a very interesting thing, that a lot of his opponents played incorrectly without that information. I'm curious to see how the deck list actually looked as soon as it becomes released. But I think I looked at 3 of FriendMTG's matches and I never saw him ninja, unless I misremember this. So yeah, very interesting build. Also very heavy on the bounce spells. I saw multiple Vapor Snacks. One second. Multiple Vapor Snacks, Echoing Truth, Boomerang, and Snap. So he had a wide variety of bounce spells available, and a lot more of them than Stock Delver usually does. At this point, stock Mono Blue Delver is kind of skimping on bounce spells. Has like 1 Snap and 1 Vapor Snack. And the main source of interaction and the main source of allowing your creatures to attack through is usually mutagenic growth. And I think FriendMTG also didn't have any mutagenic growth, or at least I didn't see any. So going back to kind of an old school build, I'm not certain if he just has a lot of experience with a build that is like half a year old and just reverted back to that, or if this is actually a genius metagame call where he figured out that some of the deck configurations that were good a while ago are now good once again, with more bounce and no mutagenic growth. And one thing that I really admired in FriendMTG's gameplay was also his much more aggressive usage of Gush than I've seen from many other pilots of this archetype. It's not that impressive here yet. This is like a turn 3 Gush where he was likely, I guess turn 4, where I was likely to miss his land drop here and decided to bounce lands to look for more pressure, while Green Prinny is not really doing anything yet. So kind of a normal play when you're trying to be the beatdown in this matchup, but in the finals there was a pretty fighting over brainstorm here is also interesting. Just a lot of non-intuitive lines of plays. But yeah, in the finals there was also a very weird looking gush that ended up working out really well, so kind of interesting how Friend MTG approaches this deck and these matchups. Yeah, that is true. I think the fact that your spell stutters and fairy miscreants get killed a lot is not that big of an advantage. That's definitely true because your opponent still has to get them off of the board at some point. But yeah, I think the way that your opponent blocks and attacks is the most important advantage. Like core Skyfishers being unwilling to trade damage back and forth, or your opponent. I saw a lot of the Delver opponents in the Delver mirrors flash in like spell stutter sprites defensively so that they can block friends' spell stutters and trade off to prevent a ninja hit. When for many of these opponents, I think trading damage and getting their own ninjas onto the board would have been very beneficial, but they were just like playing scared that friend shows up with a ninja and then they fall behind. So yeah, blocking and attacking is the most important part, where having access to ninja, or not actually having access to ninja but still making your opponent scared, can be an advantage. Because he gets all the benefits of the ninja without any of the downsides. It's never going to be stuck in his hand if he doesn't play any. Once again, I can't guarantee that he didn't play any, but I never saw them show up in this, what is it, like 7 or 8 game sample size. So Fren was willing to counterspell a brainstorm here, which gives Green Prinny the opportunity to Ash Barrens for the planes and then get Tireless Tribe on the board. That looked like a very favorable exchange for Green Prinny, and now the Fairy Miscreant is even forced to block. Green Prinny gives up a card out of hand to keep the Tireless Tribe alive, but Fren has the bounce spell. Bounces the Tireless Tribe, so the Fairy Miscreant stays alive, and then Green Prinny shows the Serrated Arrows, which get counterspelled as well. Now once again behind on the board, but a window of opportunity to resolve Tribe. And even comes up with the second Serrated Arrow, so it looks like he's on similarly many Serrated Arrows as the Michael Jacob sideboard, but we also saw some unique cards from him that Michael Jacob did not play, like the Piracy Charm. So kind of a unique take on the sideboarding strategy by Green Prinny, but embracing some of the transformational aspects that Michael Jacob had, with Serrated Arrows and then a bunch more flyers to board into Stormborn Geists and Spire Golems from the Tireless Tribe side. Fairy Miscreants get played, the other Fairy Miscreants get shut down in response, so it doesn't draw a card. But from all this investment into making land drops to 5 mana and then fighting through counter magic with Serrated Arrows, Green Prinny is actually at a very low card count in hand, only 2 cards, so even now that this Tireless Trap gets to attack freely, it doesn't really threaten a combo yet. So that's also interesting. They traded resources back and forth so much that basically Green Prinny needs to find a gush to fill his hand again. Before he finds a gush, this Tireless Trap is not going to be a threat. But yeah, Inside Out plus gush here is still threatening, but Fren MTG has more mana available to presumably bounce or counter the Inside Out. Yeah, exactly. It's a hybrid of MJ's build and the combo protection boards. Like Hellutek is usually playing like Apostle's Blessing and Piracy Charms and Standard Bearers and like trying to keep the combo alive, and MJ is moving away from the combo pretty heavily, and Green Prinny has like a little bit of an aspect of both of those and can flexibly change towards either protecting the combo or transforming into something else, but is less dedicated to either of those plans. Still, Fren MTG is very willing to trade damage here with the Spiral Golem, which is interesting. Usually you want to keep at least one blocker back for Tribe, but that shows a lot of strength out of Friend MTG's hand. If he's willing to take Tireless Tribe hits here, it very likely means that there's enough counter magic and bounce available to deal with the potential combo. Countering the Stormbound Geist here, very important, so that the Spiral Golem can keep attacking freely, and very difficult to get a Stormbound Geist off of the board, especially with Serrated Arrows as backup for it. And Friend MTG also willingly playing 1 toughness creatures into these arrows. That's the third Fairy Miscreant that it trades for, basically, after having killed 2 of them already. It's also interesting that, once again, kind of an upside of respect for Ninja, I would say. Green pretty could have chosen to make this Spiral Golem into a 1/3 like way earlier for multiple turns already, so that he takes half of the combat damage in this race, but has chosen not to do that for multiple turns. And Ninja could be another reason for that, because if you shrink the Spiral Golem to a 1/3 so it's more comfortable to race against it, then your opponent can just pick it up with a Ninja, hit you for 2, and then replay a 2/4 Spiral Golem, and you basically lose out on a Serrated Arrows counter that could have otherwise killed a Delver of Secrets or Spellstutter or something. So you lose out on your Serrated Arrows counter and you don't actually accomplish anything. But without Ninja available, that is actually an okay play, buying yourself a ton more time against the Spiral Golem. You probably still want at least 1 Serrated Arrows counters for fairies. It's still important to keep your opponent's fairy count low, but just something to consider, and a line of play that Ninja really blocks off. And Green pretty finally managed to get Friend MTG to 17, which means there's a need for 1 fewer card out of the hand to be discarded to make a combo turn work. But now there's once again a good blocker on the board, and Augur of Bolas. Vapor's Neck was revealed to the Augur of Bolas trigger, so it's guaranteed that there's more bounce available. Yeah, I'm not certain if 1/3 would be enough to make it held back as a blocker. I'm not even certain if it being held back as a blocker is something that's good or bad for Green Print. It kind of depends on the contents of his hand. But even this Augur of Bolas is willing to attack. Like, Friend MTG really showing that he's willing to play this deck very aggressively in multiple matchups and multiple matches. I just saw him playing much more aggressively than many other people would. I think this Augur of Bolas would be staying back on defense to protect against the combo in like 90 to 95% of not only cases, but like played by 90% of players. But we saw Vapor Snake on the Tireless Tribe, then it resolves on the way back down. There's Boomerang, which I talked about. The deck is just very very heavy on bounce, especially in the post-board games. So Friend MTG has like 4, 5, or 6 bounce spells available, so actually can fight over Tireless Tribe really well. Though it looks like there's no gut shots to make room for all of this, so gut shot would be even cheaper interaction against Tireless Tribe, but it's less flexible because it doesn't deal with the higher toughness creatures. But Green really knows this Tireless Tribe has to stay on the board, otherwise the Augur of Bolas attack is actually lethal, so very important that it got the damage in. Yeah, Boomerang can also get bounce lands for sure. That is a good usage of it. For example, against like Blue-Black and Boros, though in those matchups you don't have that much other stuff that you want to bounce. I guess bouncing a combination of Gurmag Angler and Dimir Aqueduct is a pretty nice utility to have. So yeah, we have a fight here over the Boomerang because Tireless Tribe needs to be on the board to more or less jump block, and then we see the Echoing Truth as well. So a ton of bounce spells ton of counter magic that was stockpiled in Green Prinny's hand. The Tireless Trap does get to stick around. Another bounce spell. Another bounce spell. And there we go, the Tireless Trap finally gets bounced after the 4th attempt. And therefore, Fren MTG has lethal on the board and wins. So, second quarterfinals, 8-6-8-6 against James B. 8-6-8-6 on Blue-Red Delver, if I remember correctly, and James B on Mill Delver, which is kind of his his own creation. 1 second. His own homebrew creation, basically combining a very heavy cantrip suite with Gushes and so on with Jace's Erasure and Whirlpool Rider to mill his opponents out in game 1. So he has a much less interactive game plan that isn't really disrupted by removal that much, with a Delver of Secrets in there just as an extra threat, though I think the Delver of Secrets in the deck are kind of iffy in the main deck because they rarely can get there on their own, because there's no other threats to really back that pressure up. But then the sideboard is full of cards that you would normally see in the main deck of a mono blue Delver deck. There's like Ninjas of the Deep Hours, Stormbound Guys, Spellstutter Sprites, Fairy Miscreants, Spire Golems, all of that type of stuff is in the sideboard, and then he can choose to either keep the mill combo intact or board some aspects of it out for more creatures, or maybe board all of the aspects of the combo out for all creatures and transform into a normal mono blue Delver deck. So pretty flexible in how he wants to approach sideboard games, and kind of keeping his opponent guessing what he's going to bring to the table. But yeah, as a downside, you don't have access to as many real sideboard cards because your sideboard is filled with the transformational material. Is starting on turn 1 Delver here though, and actually transforming it right away with a Gush, but then follows it up with Jace's Erasure. So we already see the duality of this deck list here, in that it both has some aggressive aspects in Delver and then some combo aspects in Erasure, and they don't really synergize well with each other. Though 8-6-8-6 has a lot of respect for this Delver regardless, even though it does not really synergize with the rest of the deck and tries to kill it immediately, manages to do so, gets it off of the board with an early scrat. Though it is slightly uncomfortable to, first of all, not have any pressure on the board to fight against this Jace's Erasure, and secondly, you don't really want to get your red source onto the board this early. If you're blue-red Delver, you kind of want to have multiple blue mana available first before you start killing things. And 8-6-8-6 definitely on a clock here, trying to end the game before this Jace's Erasure mills him out. But second Delver, once again, not really synergizing with the Jace's Erasure, but putting some amount of pressure on 8-6-8-6 to still come up with more removal. Still just pondering, so pretty slow and clunky start by 8-6-8-6. Augur of Bolas runs into Daze, and Echoing Truth revealed to this Delver of Secret, which is also kind of mediocre in this matchup. Very aggressively gushing here after having already dazed, so he went from 3 lands to 2, now gushing back to 0 lands in play, which is quite the investment. Second Erasure being played, so using that window of opportunity while 8-6-8-6 was tapped out to resolve another one of these key enchantments, and Augur coming down, not revealing anything if I saw that correctly. The only revealed card at the moment is the island that he Ash Barons for, so kind of unfortunate that the Augur missed. Delver does transform here, though once again it's not the most threatening. And Whirlpool Rider also coming down, able to trigger these Jace's Erasures 8 times, but kind of a low hand size already. There was a lot of trading of resources back and forth. The days, the delvers, playing multiple delvers definitely makes these Whirlpool Riders weaker, because then you have lower cards in hand and then less Jace's Erasure triggers. So that can definitely come back to bite James B here, and maybe even keeping the Delver of Secrets in hand was a better approach to the matchup, because they don't actually end up doing much in the long run, just run into your opponent's lightning bolts, and they make the mill plan a lot worse. Though it is something to be said for making your opponent switch into a more reactive role here and making them respect these Delvers, and then you get a window of opportunity to resolve these Jace's Erasures while your opponent is tapping themselves out for lightning bolts and Scrat, of course. But yeah, this Whirlpool Rider resolves here for only 8 triggers, 4 cards in hand previously that were shuffled back, and 4 new cards drawn. And this Delver of Secrets not even attacking, just holding it back on defense so that there's a favorable blocker for the Augur to stop a ninja hit. And 8686 can snap the... Was that a snap? I think so. It has to be. I mean, I can jump back, but I think it was snap on the Delver of Secrets, untapping now. Yeah, and now getting the ninja hit in regardless. But yeah, you can see how unimpressive these Delver of Secrets are in this deck from time to time, especially in this matchup. They're more like a 3-2 blocker than a 3-2 attacker, which is not the most exciting stat line for a blocker. But yeah, 8686 finally coming up with some pressure here. Brainstorm is another mill 6, so getting very close to getting milled out, and the Ninja of the Deep Mars drawing a card every turn is both an upside and a downside here, because many of the cards in the deck don't really do that much in terms of applying pressure, but drawing more cards accelerates the rate at which you're milled out. James B still respecting this ninja and double blocking it with Whirlpool Rider and Delver of Secrets. The 1/1 Delver of Secrets manages to get half a card worth of value. Another ninja coming down, Thought Scour in response. Spellstutter wants to counter the Thought Scour. Gush in response. Yeah, this is a lot of mill happening. But the Spellstutter successfully stops the Thought Scour, which would basically mill 4 cards. But library is too empty here, and James B actually manages to win the game. Oh no, wait. What? Wait, what was the library? 11 cards. Ten. What the hell? So a Thought Scar. Yeah, and Gushed in response to put him to 6 cards. Oh yeah, and then 2 cards from these triggers. Yeah, okay. I think I was confused by the result being shown in the client, and I think it's correct. James B did win. Yeah, I just was confused by the 0-2 being in front of the wrong person. It looked like James B was 0-2, but actually like 8686 was 0-2 against James B. Then it makes a lot of sense. So manages to barely, or not even barely, just milling out 8686 pretty comfortably, who spent a lot of time and resources on fighting these Delver of Secrets. And then, because the second erasure resolved and many of the Gushes and Whirlpool Riders afterwards also resolved, just way too slow of a clock to deal with that mill game plan. And we will see right now whether James B does anything transformational or keeps the mill game plan intact, or maybe mixes it up with a combination. Not scoring in response for the small value of maybe getting the land that was supposed to be searched for. but both players with kind of a slow start here. No pressure applied by 8686. Once again, just pondering instead of doing something proactive. And James B brainstorms in response here, trying to dodge the spells at his right. And it's interesting once again that 8686 got a mountain this early on, though I assume in the post-board games that just means he has access to Pyroblast and really wants that available, because none of the Lightning Bolt and Scrat type cards are all that good in the matchup, and they wouldn't really entice you into getting your red source early on, so Pyroblast is very likely here. Still bad for 8686 to not apply any pressure. Still not applying pressure, just cantripping and cantripping. And now an Augur finally comes down, though that's a pretty anemic body on the board. Revealing Preordain though, so more card advantage, but it's just cycling through cards and improving your hand, but at the same time reducing your deck size. And there's 2 Jace's Erasers coming down here, and not even a Pyroblast at end of turn, so that's pretty surprising to me that the red source that was fetched so early on, oh there's the Pyroblast. Okay, just like slightly cautious timing to play around days, that makes a lot of sense. 8686 didn't want to end of turn the Pyroblast so that he doesn't run it into days. The third Erasure coming down here with 2 of them sticking on the board. And this ninja once again has the downside of drawing extra cards. Gush into Pauper Rider, and we can see these Erasures going completely crazy. 6 cards here, so another mill for 12. After the Gush has already milled for 4. Down to 19 cards already, and it's only turn 6. And basically losing 4 cards a turn. If this ninja connects, it's 1 card. The draw step is 1 card. And that's a very good exchange for James B as well, especially because it resolved. I'm very surprised that with 7 cards in hand on 8686's side, that this just resolves. He blocked with Whirlpool Rider on the ninja and then snapped it back to hand, so that he can once again try to combo off with Whirlpool Rider, and then that trigger would basically end the game with double Erasure still on the board. And that soaks up a ton of damage still. Thought Scar at end of turn is also threatening. Spell Stutter to stop it, Counterspell to stamp that, another Spell Stutter. So 8686 manages to win the fight over the Thought Scar here at end of turn. But the Whirlpool Rider in hand is a huge threat, so much more important to win that fight. Gush to fill the hand with more cards and simultaneously mill. Counterspell. Counterspell back, and now this Whirlpool Rider resolving pretty much ends the game. Allows him to draw an extra 5 cards, which was mill for an extra 10, so the mill game plan gets there twice in a row against Blue Red Delver. And 8686 just had way too little pressure the entire game, and also didn't manage to keep Jace's Erasures off of the board. Okay, so third quarterfinal now, Condescend against BR Bramer. Condescend on the bottom, of course, and BR Bramer on the top. I think this is blue-black control against Tireless Tribe again, if I remember correctly. Everyone's starting on islands. This was one of the most blue top 8s we had in a long time. Condescend grabs the white source for the Tireless Tribe, then runs out Augur into a counterspell, and BR Bramer answers with Augur of his own, reveals Disfigure, and then plays a bounce land. And the Tireless Tribe gets to resolve now, while BR Bramer's shields were down. But there's Augur available to block, and a ton of open mana, so it's very difficult here for Condescend to combo through this. Needs Shadow Rift and Inside Out to get through the Augur, and then mana available to deal with BR Bramer's interactive cards as well. End of turn Alchemy, dumping a bunch of lands into the graveyard, so it doesn't really tell us much what he chose to not take off of the Alchemy. Trainer's Edict getting countered by Circular Logic, counters well back. Dispel back, so the Tireless Tribe gets to stick around. Probes his hand. Sadly, we cannot even see the contents of the hand out of the replay. It's not an error on my part not recording that, it just isn't available to us. So Condescend now heavily shaping the hand, and also pretty aggressive usage of Gush once again. Had 5 lands available and willing to return 2 of those tapped lands back into hand, even though they cannot be replayed at this point, just to make sure the Gush resolves. That looks like a very aggressive usage of the card, because you could have theoretically waited a turn, untapped with all 5 of those mana, and then Gushed, so that you have 6 mana available on your next turn. Now Condescend only has 4 mana available on the next turn. So willing to heavily set back the mana development just to resolve that draw through. That seems a little bit sketchy to me, but we'll see. I think it works out well for him here. And this bounce land being very awkward here for B-Bramer. Using a Disfigure on your own turn is pretty much always awful. I mean, he kind of was forced into it here because of his mana development, had to use the bounce land for some blue mana, and then once you've already spent the blue part of it, then you do want to use the floating black mana that you have available. But I think B.R. had to play this a lot more cautiously and keep this Disfigure open on his opponent's turn. This just ended up working very poorly and played into Condescend's cards. Because now Condescend can discard the worst card in his hand very easily to keep this Tireless Tribe alive. We even know there's excess islands in the hand from the Gush previously, so you're really just trading your Disfigure for an island, and you're making it very easy for Condescend to combo off here, because he doesn't have to worry about the Disfigure anymore. And as we see here, Shadow Rift, a second Gush, Brainstorm, finds the combo and just kills Bria Bramer. And this type of combo would have not been possible if there was Disfigure available on the other side. Just one open black mana and one Disfigure would have already stopped this combo attempt, so Bria Bramer really making it easy on Condescend by tapping out there and giving him a free turn to combo with. Very questionable line of play. Yeah, exactly. If there's a combo, it's going to kill him regardless, whether you cast Disfigure or not. And if there's no combo, then the Disfigure is incredibly useful. So, looked very sketchy what happened there. And I think B.R. Bramer misplayed that for sure. Either because he should have just kept the Disfigure open instead of what he did on his own turn, or because he should have kept the Disfigure in hand. Even if there's even if you lose out on the black mana, it could have been better. Okay, so Trainer's Edict away the Augur, and then managed to Doomblade away the Tireless Tribe, and counterspell the Spiral Golem. So we have figured out there's no Dispel or Circular Logic backup here for Condescend, but sideboarding into a more creature-heavy configuration to fight through the opponent's removal. Because even Spiral Golem is coming in and it's the weaker of the two transformational creatures. Stormbound Geist is a lot stronger against the opponent's removal heavy deck, and if both Stormbound Geist and Spiral Golem are coming in, you can see that Condescend likely moved much further away from the combo and much more towards creature density, which also helps against the Trainer's Edicts. Yeah, Radiant Fountain and Dimir Guildgate, also not cards I'm a huge fan of. Maybe Dimir Guildgate is necessary for the mana base, but I hate Radiant Fountain in blue-black decks because it just makes casting all of your very color-intensive plays very difficult. And B.R. Bramer main phasing Forbidden Alchemy here and follows up with the rest. So yeah, many of the things that B.R. Bramer did here looked pretty suspicious, both in deck building and in how the game was sequenced, how the spells were sequenced. So yeah, just not a fan of B.R. Bramer's approach here. Radiant Fountain being bounced and replayed. At least he managed to now arrive at a break point where the life gain actually matters and requires an extra card from Condescend to combo with. Also, kind of a weird mana tapping here. I think you want to tap... no, maybe it was not possible. Tapping differently to be able to keep Counterspell open more easily. I think you want to tap your bounce lands much earlier in the turn so that your sequencing becomes more smooth, but ended up not mattering here because BR Bramer just completely tapped out again. Spire Golem coming down, but it's kind of embarrassing in the face of Moldrifter. It still outclasses the opposing creatures on the board, but like you're losing out in the fair fight so hard if your opponent's casting Geomic Anglers and Moldrifters and you're casting Spire Golems. So I think transforming into the Spire Golem plan is also kind of iffy. I'm a fan of Stormbound guys to soak up the Trainer's Edicts and just in general apply more pressure on your opponent, but Spire Golem seems kind of below the curve in terms of transformational plans in this matchup. I think you need to have much of the combo still around to keep your opponent honest. But then again, I don't have that much experience in this matchup, especially with this like hybrid protect the combo. Oh no, that was green pretty. Condescend might just have a fully transformational sideboard. So yeah, green pretty, no, Condescend trying to transform here pretty heavily and not lean on the combo as much, but very much losing the fair fight to his opponent's superior value creatures. Now behind in terms of power and toughness, behind in terms of value. I guess there's more cards in hand, but also a lot fewer lands available now after having cashed 2 Gushes. And even willing to attack with this Moldrifter, which makes it likely that there's another Disfigure. As we can see here, Circular Logic tries to counter the Disfigure and basically gets the Moldrifter off of the board, but there's Dispel, so that the Disfigure resolves and the Spire Golem goes away. And Condescend in a very difficult position here. Even playing an Ash Barrens to have the extra mana available, though I'm not certain what the extra mana would be for. He played the Ash Barrens out so that there's 2 mana available, but what would you want to play for 2 mana? There's like Inside Outs, of course, but they aren't really appealing on this board. You would rather hope to hold them in hand for a combo, I think. And none of the counter magic really costs 2, right? So theoretically he could have just cycled the Ash Barrens for an island and then had 1 mana left available if the island is the land drop. Hardcast Days. It's possible, but it seems unlikely that you would want to have Ash Barrens on your board to have Hardcast Days instead of playing the Ash Barrens as an island and then having alternative cast days. I'm not certain. Even Apostle's Blessing, I guess you could hardcast an Apostle's Blessing to not be forced into paying the 2 life, but at this point the Stormbound guy's dying is a lot better for you than the Apostle's Blessing, unless there's like an exiling spell like Oblivion Strike or Complete Disregard or something specific, which is not that commonly played. Yeah, even after like getting the island, you can still daze it back to your hand. So I'm not certain why Condescend chose to do that, but I assume he had a reason to play the Ash Barrens and have these 2 mana available. Second Angler coming down though puts a lot of pressure on Condescend. Deep Analysis Flashback, but I mean that was a way to use 2 mana, but not something that he could do in that turn, and then yeah, just too much pressure on the life total, not finding an answer to all these anglers, and the Stormbound guys is even unable to block the anglers, so Condescend just dies there. Yeah, it's possible that the inside, but then why didn't that happen if he wanted to cycle Inside Out? I'm not sure. Well, on to game 3. Early white source here, but not spending it, so Kinda not ideal for Condescend. There's Doomblade cycling through Shadow Rift. Very much looking for a Tireless Tribe here and managed to find it off of the Brainstorm. Now with 1 blue mana available for potential protection. And BR Bramer chooses to not spend the Doomblade yet to try and fight over it. After having preordained, does fight over it on Condescend's end of turn though, which gets stopped by a Dispel. But that not making... It's a... I mean, it's very mana efficient, but he fought over Tireless Tribe on his opponent's end of turn with Doomblade. It got dispelled, and then he didn't really utilize the moment of weakness from Condescend in any way. So it's interesting whether he should just hold the Doomblade for a combo turn as well, because it really restricts Condescend's mana if he has to have Shadow Rift and Inside Out, which is 3 mana already, and then more protective cards for the Doomblade. So it makes it very difficult for Condescend to ever assemble a combo if it is so mana hungry to get through all this interaction. If you just allow Condescend to trade Dispel for Doomblade on a turn where it's convenient for Condescend, and then the Dispel and the Doomblade are both gone, but Condescend has more mana to work with, it really helps Condescend to get to a combo turn much more easily. So both the Disfigure in game 1 and the Doomblade in game 3 kind of felt like they helped Condescend more than they helped BR Bramer, and it looked like BR Bramer just played the matchup in kind of a weird way, maybe some inexperience with how to approach Tireless Tribe, because these plays did not seem optimal, and kind of made it easier for Condescend to combo off. More brainstorming here to find the pieces of the combo, or more protection. Yeah, if you do have a lot of interaction, then maybe trading off for the Dispel can be okay, for sure, because then if you have more interaction, then once the Dispel is gone, you can resolve your other interaction. But I think most of the time you just want to overload Tireless Tribe's mana and like play your Doomblade on end of turn, then untap and Chainer's Edict, and then they counter back and you like Dispel that counter back or something. Gush here to refill the hand, and Condescend comes up with a second Tribe and a Stormbound Geist. Duress takes away Shadow Rift, so that makes it more difficult to combo through these Augurs. And an extra Augur by Condescend, revealing Brainstorm. Yeah, I think taxing the hand size is unlikely to work if there's enough Gushes coming up and Tribe really has enough time to find their Gushes, but yeah, I think overloading the mana is the most efficient plan usually, unless you have like a spot where you can really force your removal through. If you have a lot of counter backup for your removal and make sure it resolves, it's good, and also overloading their mana is a good plan. I think reducing their hand size is not a great plan, especially like trading Disfigures for cards in hand and all that. Okay, so second guy's coming down, so Condescend is now fully on the fly over for 4 damage a turn and beat BR Bramer down game plan, and BR Bramer is also on kind of a aggressive game plan here with Gurmag Angler beating down. So both of them kind of accepted the fact that the combo is kept in check, though third Tireless Tribe once again threatening combo a little bit, but Duress picks off the Inside Out, and then with 1 card in hand left for Condescend, it becomes very difficult to ever have a combo. This was also an interesting spot. I looked at this before a little bit when I recorded it, and I felt like in this spot you should likely just block with Tireless Tribe on the Angler. It's pretty obvious that these Stormbound guys are supposed to win the game, and it's also pretty obvious that at some point you need to start chump blocking, right? So if you don't chump block this turn with the Tireless Tribe, you really open yourself up to like an Echoing Decay or something similar. Even Shrivel, though I assume Shrivel wouldn't be coming in this matchup, but Echoing Decay is something that could really be there. And Like, if Echoing Decay targets Tireless Tribe here, you would have to discard 3 cards in hand to keep all 3 of the tribes alive, which Condescend doesn't even have. And if you lose all 3 tribes to the Echoing Decay, it becomes much more likely that BR Bramer can actually assemble lethal here, just like Doomblade the Augur and swing for 7, something similar. So I think jump blocking here with one of the Tireless Tribes to play around any kind of AoE that gets multiple Tireless Tribes off of the board at the same time seems a little bit better, because you will end up jump blocking soon regardless. So if you feel like you're going to be jump blocking next turn with Tireless Tribe, then why not make sure that the jump block works this turn, so that there's no like surprising amount of removal getting the Augur, the Gurmag Angler plus Augur attack through. Okay, yeah, like he pretends like he has some aggressive like combo enabling attack here, but then figures out that it actually isn't there, doesn't exist, and then this turn there's the Tireless Tribe block. But yeah, it was just like way better the previous turn, I think. Though he did come up with another Inside Out and manages to discard 2 cards here and trade for the discard 1 card and trade for the Gurmag Angler. Switches the power and toughness and makes it into a 5/1. That's a pretty cute play to stop BR Bramer's counterplay. Really interesting usage of the cards that are otherwise meant for different purposes, and that makes the board position for Condescend a lot better. So it makes some sense why he wanted to hold on to these tribes, but he still would have had 2 tribes available after jump blocking with 1 already. Kind of an interesting spot. I just felt like I would have jump blocked the previous turn, but it's also possible that was incorrect and he just wanted to have density of Tireless Tribes there. But yeah, BR Bramer does not come up with an answer to the 3 Stormbound Geists and loses the quarterfinals. So now we move on to the last of the 4 quarterfinals, Nullion against Limited Power, which is Blue-Red Delver against some other Delver. I think it's Mono Blue against Blue-Red or Blue-Red Mirror, one of those 2. No, it's perfect if you interrupt, then I have something to talk about. Keep going. It's much more interesting to talk back and forth with people in the chat that are interacting as well. So yeah, Augur of Bolas opening, spreading the Delver, Spire Golem, and oh yeah, this is an interesting spot. Attacking the Spire Golem, the Augur into the Spire Golem, which threatens Lightning Bolt, where the Lightning Bolt would be able to shoot down the Spire Golem if Nullion blocks, but is unable to shoot down the Spire Golem if Nullion doesn't block. And obviously not blocking is also attached with a huge risk of Ninja of the Deep Hours, returning this Augur to hand, getting an extra card, and then the Augur can come back down again. So very interesting to me that Nullion chooses to actually not block and allow the Ninja instead of just allowing the Lightning Bolt, because Lightning Bolt seems pretty inefficient here. I mean, it's still an inefficient answer to the Spire Golem, but it's interesting that the Ninja hit was accepted by Nullion just to keep the Spire Golem on the board. Seemed a little bit unintuitive to me, but once again, he's also valuing his own board presence, allowing him to get his own ninjas onto the board maybe. But yeah, second Spire Golem coming down, so now he's kind of in the same position again, and if these Augurs just attack into it, you're forced to block at some point, right? You cannot have like a 2/4 on the board that never blocks your opponent's 1/3s, because then like no attacks, no blocks seems weird. So this turn he just blocks, though the double block is a lot more profitable. That was actually not the greatest exchange for Limited Power, that Nullion get to double block and get one of the Augurs off of the board. But there was the Lightning Bolt, the Spire Golem gets shot down finally. So yeah, pretty interesting exchange. Nullion played around the Lightning Bolt with the first Spire Golem, but then into it with the second one. Though the second time it was pretty profitable to get the Augur off of the board in the process. Third Spire Golem gets scredded down, and Limited Power manages to resolve a gush and manages to spell stutter a preordain. So that's a very good exchange there for Limited Power in terms of card advantage. And once again, willing to trade a creature and a lightning bolt for these Spire Golems. So Nullian's ability to draw all 4 Spire Golems here in game 1 was actually insanely important. And Nullian created a lot less card advantage with his cards, but the fact that these Spire Golems always traded 2 for 1 actually keeps him in the game. So basically the Spire Golem was like a Moldrifter of sorts, or an Augur of Bolas of sorts, trading for, like, this one traded for Spellstutter and Bolt, this one traded for Augur and Bolt, though Augur obviously creates some extra value in the process. So, and this one traded for Scred, or maybe these two like switch them up, but one traded for Augur and Bolt and one for Scred. So these 3 Spire Golems got 5 cards out of Limited Power's hand. Pretty interesting. And we see here both players playing their Spellstutter sprites for quote-unquote no value. Nullian had attacked with the Spire Golem, so Limited Power flashes in Spellstutter sprite to be able to attack with it. And Nullian actually, on his own end of turn, plays a Spellstutter sprite to have it available as a blocker. So a lot of respect for ninjas here as well, and a lot of respect for keeping the board control in terms of fairy count and flyers available. But seems very interesting to me. I think out of Limited Power's perspective, it makes a lot of sense to get the Spellstutter down and enable a ninja with it. Out of Nullian's perspective, it seems a little bit aggressive to use the Spellstutter here right away instead of just allowing the ninja hit, and then ninja on the board is not actually that valuable. It runs into Spire Golem, runs into Augur, just kind of a 2/2 that sits around and doesn't do that much. But yeah, the trade is pretty favorable. So both players really respecting ninja here, which we talked about earlier, is a very important dynamic. And Friend MTG dodging that dynamic while still getting the opponent to play scared was very important for him. Nullian very much still running out of cards here with access to a lot fewer gushes. And we see that Limited Power did have this ninja stuck in the hand. The Spellstutter stopped it from coming down as a ninjutsu creature, and then the ninja has to just be hard cast here from Limited Power's perspective, though it still looks pretty bad on this board against 2 higher toughness creatures that it just runs into uselessly. But this Spire Golem is still attacking every turn, which seems a little bit ambitious. There is a higher life total for Nullian, so trading damage is not that bad. And this was a very weird turn. Let me rewind that actually. So here we see ninja hardcast by Limited Power, Spire Golem still willing to trade, and Delver comes down. And then these 2 attack, which kind of threatens ninja as well. There's the Dragon Tap, but not actually putting the ninja into play. And then in his end of turn, he like taps mana once again, but then like never untaps them, never does anything with it, right? Did I miss something? These replays are a little bit strange in how quickly like spells happen or anything, but I think he just tapped for mana, not doing anything, right? What the hell? Let me see if I missed a spell or something, because I don't really understand this turn at all. Delver comes down. Alright, 1 card got added to the graveyard. But what was it? Or 15? 15? Still 15 cards in the graveyard. And this mana was not used for anything. What? I don't understand what was happening here. No, same cards Same amount of cards. Yeah, but I mean, you can tap for a second ninja and then untap again, and then like you pretend like you have it, but you end up with untapped lands. Here he pretended to have a ninja in the combat, then just floated the mana and let it go away, and then also tapped random mana on his own end of turn, and then stayed tapped out. Like, what the hell? And I don't think I missed anything. Like, there's nothing going to the graveyard, I think. No spells being shown. Yeah. Like, ninja would have also been a reasonable explanation for the line of play that he did take. Second ninja in hand, hard casting the first one, then being able to return this augur, replay it, but like, yeah, I don't think there's anything that happened. He just tapped for mana on his own turn for no apparent reason. I mean, mind gaming is like a reasonable explanation, but it's not even good mind gaming. He actually just tapped himself out. So I don't really get it. So yeah, back to Nguyen's turn. F6 value, true that. You get to F6 if you just tapped yourself out, but it's a highly interactive matchup. He has 6 cards in hand. There's like spell stutters and counter spells and lightning bolts, so much stuff that Nguyen would have to consider here that he now doesn't have to consider at all, so I don't know. Well, Delver reveals Gush, that's basically the best possible case for Nguyen. What? And this game is just so strange. F8 value, that's also true. And Nguyen does not attack. I think this was also just a misclick, because how are you not attacking on this board? I think attacking for 5 in the air is pretty obvious, and even attacking for 6 on the ground could be okay, depending on what your follow-up is. But he chooses to not attack. I assume it's just a misclick, because there's no reasonable explanation for me to see why at least the Delver should always attack. And you just saw that your opponent... Yeah, I guess so. That he like missed the ninja, and then because the mana wasn't available he wanted to hard. But it wasn't even his main phase. We were in his end of turn step. I don't think there's any chat, but it's no longer possible for me to check it. It's a good guess, but I haven't seen any of that. Maybe they are friends and we're like chatting somewhere else, chatting on Facebook or Discord or something, and one of them misclicked and they want to like fix it. I think like an involuntary misclick, like Nguyen just skipped his combat by accident, is reasonable, and then also like a misclick to make up for your opponent's misclick out of sportsmanship is also reasonable. But like, out of a purely strategic point of view, none of these turns made any sense, and it's kind of strange. I have no idea whether they are friends or not, and also Nguyen isn't really known to me for his sportsmanship. My only experience with him so far was him ghosting a streamer. But who knows, if they are friends and if there was some misclicking going on, maybe they wanted to even the playing field. Who knows? I can't really tell, but this was one of the strangest turn cycles I've seen in a long time, because both players made some very questionable plays that just looked like both of them misclicked or did something weird to mind game each other or something. Here the game actually ended. I have no idea. Maybe they agreed on some split or something, but they managed to play the rest of the match normally, I think. So I have no idea what actually went on. Definitely some sketchy stuff happening here. Limited power ended up winning, so Nguyen skipped his combat and then conceded the game. Don't ask me. I'm only looking at these replays I know pretty much as you do, and that looked very weird to me as well. Yeah, maybe they agreed on some top 8 split and then just decided that they have better chances if limited power wins the match, but then they keep playing another full game. here. Like if they agreed on a split and just want one person to win, then they could just concede the match and move on. But they just keep playing here. Now Million is on the bottom and Limited Power is on the top. And I think from how I remember this, the entire game that gets played now looked like a very normal game. Like they were actually still fighting. No, splits are alright. I mean, it depends. You're only supposed to split in like the... Yeah, I guess splits in earlier rounds. Like you're only really supposed to split in the last round of a tournament, so that no other people are influenced by it. Yeah. No, you can even change the outcome of, like in a league, if both of you are in the last round of the league, you're allowed to split. Even if it changes the outcome. The rules for bribery and splitting are a little bit different on Magic Online than they are in Pauper. Like if both of you are in the last round, then they say you're not influencing anyone else. If the two of you agree on a prize split, then that's fine, because no one else like is negatively influenced by that. And I think the same holds true for tournaments. You're allowed to split the finals, but you're not allowed to split like the last round of Swiss, or in this case they're in the quarterfinals, but I have no indication whatsoever that they did this. This is not like an accusation or anything. It just, the game was so strange that I have no reasonable explanation for why that would happen. I just have no idea what went on there. Maybe they're just playing this game for fun. Maybe the previous game it was actually just like Million tilting off, misclicking and then conceding because he was pissed off that he misclicked. I have no idea. This was definitely the strangest match of the top 8 for many reasons. Okay, so second fairy miscreant comes down. Limited Power decides that's enough of a reason to fight over this miscreant here, but runs his lightning bolt into Daze. Yeah, definitely. Like, there's no normal explanation, basically. There's either some misclicking or some prize splitting or something, but who knows. There's no way for us to really find out. We can, like, ask Limited Power and Million, but I'm not even certain they would tell us if there's something sketchy going on. Let's just keep it as a mystery and keep looking at the games, I would say. But yeah, Fairy Miscreant beat down here against Limited Power. No, I don't think they really mind in terms of data collection. Like, one single data point doesn't really mean much to them. I mean, it ruining the integrity of the play is definitely a factor. Second mountain here is kind of interesting, because usually you don't want the second mountain, but in the post-board games it becomes a little bit better for Pyroblast reasons. Limited Power was not doing much here for a long time, now finally decides to scrap this Spire Golem. Million decides to Vapor Snack his own Spire Golem to keep it alive. Spellstutter wants to stop that. Gush in response, Pyroblast in response, Daze in response. So Million now 3 lands down in play, extra Daze in response, and it ends up with the Spire Golem being bounced back to Million's hand, and the Spellstutter sprite not resolving, as well as Million being able to gush, but he's now on 0 lands in play to his opponent's 5, and also he managed to save a Spire Golem that is now a 6 cost to Horror Flyer, so yeah, I don't know. This could be their staged performance to make the game seem less suspicious after the split, or maybe Million was just very invested into keeping the Spire Golem alive, who knows. Definitely a weird series. So now Million only has 1 mana to work with, keeps all these Fairy Miscreants back on defense to be able to block the Ninja. That was hardcast. Yeah, finals are fine because in finals you're not influencing anyone else, so you're free to split finals in every type of event. Leagues, 8-man drafts, anything. I mean, they weren't literally more profitable. It was just like you had to invest less time into playing your final round. Okay, so Spellstutter gets Pyroblasted. One of these fairy miscreants get bolted down. Now the ninja is coming in for the attack. Double block with miscreants to stop the ninja from getting a profitable attack in. Scrat on the 1-1. It's also kind of questionable when you know your opponent has Spiral Golem in hand. Leaves limited power with only 2 cards to work with after this Augur trigger reveals Gush, though Gush makes it so that he very quickly has more cards to work with. Very important in these matchups to draw more Gushes and resolve more Gushes than your opponents, because there's so little card advantage going on when both players manage to stop the ninja hits. Limited power also following up with Stormbound Geist here, so very dominating board position. Yeah, EV per hour makes sense. Also less variance, of course. Though if you think your finals win rate is significantly above 50%, you should not be splitting anymore. Okay, so there's the extra scratch, so the Spiral Golem that was fought over valiantly the previous, like 4 turns ago, gets just answered by 1 mana scrat, and then the board position for limited power is way too strong, and Nullian packs it in. So those were all the quarterfinals. Now we move on to the semifinals. Well, you can play more Magic if you don't split, but if you want to have as many draft phases as possible, then it's better to split and move on to the next draft quickly. Okay, so Jared James B against limited power. Jared James B now on top with the Mill Delver, and limited power with the blue-red Delver that has just managed to take down Million in a very confusing match. No, I'm not certain. Like, risk aversion comes in very different levels. There's a lot of people who manage to be fairly close to risk neutral in these types of low investment game situations. Back and forth this month and the lineup of top 8, top 16. I don't know. Do you mean like in terms of players or in terms of decks? I think in terms of decks, it's just very clear that the top 4 decks of the format are much better than all the other decks, and then the occasional metagame call good deck can show up as well, like blue-black control, Tron, Boggles are like all reasonable contenders for tier 2 decks that do well if they meet the right matchups, and those break into the top 8 from time to time. And other than that, it's just clear that Boros, Tribe, Delver, and Blue-Red Delver are clearly the best 4, and that good players on good decks frequently top 8 with those decks. There's a little bit of back and forth just because like which of the top decks does a little bit better just through variance and through like the metagame outside of these 4 decks. Sometimes it favors Boros more, sometimes it favors Delver more. But I think much of that is just what are other people playing and like how much is variance on the side of Delver or on the side of Boros. I don't really think there's like the swings look a lot bigger than they actually are. I don't think the metagame swings that rapidly. It just like from one week to another, some decks are going to perform better and some decks are going to perform worse, just from like how luck breaks. For example, I was on a pretty clean top 8 route in the tournament and then I got completely train wrecked, though some of that was my own misplays, I think, but also like the final 3 rounds just didn't break my way at all. And like if me and like Maverick Girl and Gal get like a little bit luckier in those final rounds, then all 3 of us make top 8, and then it looks like, oh, Boros is insane this week, when really it was just like a little bit of variance in the final rounds of who manages to win those tier 1 against tier 1 matchups. Yeah, that's definitely true, Rayulan. Though I think at the same time, the people who only play like one draft a day, or like one draft every few days, like the more casual audience, if they make the finals, they also want to like have the taste of a finals. Like they want to play as much Magic as possible and like experience their deck for as long as possible. It's kind of like, in the more casual audience, they would not want to split because they want to play, and in the highly competitive audience, they would not want to split because they think they're favored and just want to get as much value as possible. And there's like a mid section of grinders that are willing to split because they think their win rate is like slightly above 50% or slightly below 50%, and getting as much grinding in as possible with as little risk as possible is what they are looking for. I definitely had that period where I was like 52% or something, and it was not actually enough to go infinite with drafts, but I wanted to split like every time. But that's also not how you actually get better. Like, not splitting and putting yourself into those hard finals positions is a much better way to improve. But definitely some variety on how people approach those situations, and I've definitely been in the always split, keep drafting camp for like multiple years. I think both Tron and Rally Gaunt are pretty medium. Tribe is great. And yeah, I mean, if top players are willing to play weird decks, then those weird decks can also overperform. Like we saw like Methonical plays weird stuff, and like Deluxikov plays weird stuff, and so on and so forth. Like the Mildever and the Religant and all that. Dissonance is able to do well with Stumpy, and like many of these weirder fringe decks are carried by the fact that people are unaware how to play against them, and the players that do choose to play those decks are just a lot better than their opponents, so they manage to spike a tournament from time to time. But like Jared James B, if you look at his stats, like the last 2 weeks, I think he completely failed to place anywhere and went like 2-4 and 3-4 or something. And then this week he tops 8. But like, if you play the challenge every week and you're a skilled player with a weird deck, then at some point your weird deck is going to do well, but it's not consistently going to do as well as the tier 1 decks. Okay, back to the semifinals though. We have Jared James B resolving this Jace's Erasure, and Augraf Bolas on limited power side, so slightly more pressure than we saw from 8-6 in this matchup, who failed to come up with a creature in the early turns entirely. Though the Erasure being resolved and like sticking on the board from turn 2 onwards is very scary, and we already see Jared James B milling out a ton of cards here. Once again, the Staver of Secrets coming down, which I think is just pretty embarrassing out of this deck. Just the only threat to attack with, doesn't really do much in that sense, and we will see it playing defense as a 3-2 blocker here once again, assuming it doesn't just get lightning bolted down. Yeah, as we can see, like he transforms it right away, gets himself a 3-2 flyer, and then that's just supposed to block like Augraf Bolas. I think the deck would be a lot better off without Delver Secrets, though many of the sideboard plans maybe don't work as well without Delver. Like here, this just looks very wrong to me, though I can be wrong. Jared James B has a lot more experience with this deck than I do. Probably it's even correct to keep it alive because you need it as a blocker, but this is not a great game plan to try and keep your Delver of Secrets alive against the 7 burn spells that Blue-Red Delver has available, when Delver of Secrets on its own is just never going to win you a game. from my perspective, I would much rather have this counterspell available to make sure that your Gush resolves and make sure that your Whirlpool Rider resolves, so that you can execute your main game plan of Jace's Erasure. Though maybe the 3-2 blocker here is just way too crucial, and keeping it alive is actually correct. Just looks very weird that you fight over this Delver when it's not really proactively useful. Yeah, like there's just another strat here. Echoing Truth on the Delver, like I guess the Echoing Truth is just a pretty awful card in the matchup to begin with, so turning it into another Delver could be alright. But these Delvers have consistently been unimpressive, and when I played this deck and tried it out, I tried to focus more on the main combo game plan and have Tolarian wins instead of Delver of Secrets, which are less consistent and don't give you another angle of attack, but they do something that helps your Jace's Erasure plan. Brainstorm here on James B's main phase. Spellstutter to try and fight over it, and then counterspell the Spellstutter. This is a usage of counterspell that I'm much more comfortable with. Making sure that there's no Spellstutter action on your cantrips, making it difficult for limited power to develop a board, and yeah, resolving your draw spell so you keep milling. Then Gush here gets to replay the land and second Erasure, so that worked out really well for James B here. Now has 2 Erasures on the board, a little bit low on land count, but that doesn't really matter. You want your excess lands to be in your hand anyways to be able to Whirlpool Rider them away. But limited power does have some pressure here. All these 1 power creatures are slowly whittling James B down. Yeah, it is very possible that there's multiple counters, but even just keeping a larger hand size for Whirlpool Rider definitely has some value. Like, you don't want to be trading resources until your hand is empty, because then your Whirlpool Riders don't do anything. You kind of just want to trade resources only so that you stay alive, and only at the points where it's actually beneficial to you, and then maximize your Jace's Erasure as much as possible. Yeah, that's also true. You don't always want to cantrip on turn 1 because you want to hold them for Erasure. But like, as we saw here, Delver got Scredded and another Scred and another Lightning Bolt. If James B just didn't have any Delvers in his deck, he would strand his opponent on double Scred. The Lightning Bolt could deal 3 damage to the face still, but these Screds were just complete mulligans. And instead he just opened up his opponent's removal to be useful. So it's kind of weird how bad these Delvers are in any matchup where opponent has removal for them. Same against blue-black. Like, if you play a Delver, they just like, yes, my Disfigure finally has a usage in life. And if you never play a Delver, then they're just sitting there with Disfigures and Screds and all that in their hand. And their cards are useless, and your cards can be Whirlpool Ridered away, and then you get a new card out of the Delver. So seems kind of strange to be playing Delvers, but that's also true. You can use your turn 1 mana with Delver pretty effectively. I'm just not certain if it's worth the card. I'm not worried about it being worth the mana. I think you can free up the mana to play a Delver most of the time. I just feel like there would be better defensive cards, there would be better combo cards, and you open up your opponent's removal for no real value. Yeah, but like, even Fairy Miscreants seem more appealing to me, because they also block 1/1, but they occasionally draw your card. Not sure. It is kind of a Tolarian wins on the stick, but it does shuffle back, which is worse for you if you want to get rid of the Delvers, but a little bit better for you if you have more Whirlpool Riders in hand so they don't discard each other. James B going for a Gush here, and after that gets countered, Whirlpool Rider comes down. Kind of a low hand size, but this is another mill for 8, so not terrible. Though Gush resolving and this resolving would have been even greater, because then that would have meant another mill for 4, in addition to these 8. And the higher hand size would have also cleanly like change into another Whirlpool Rider, or maybe snap on this Whirlpool Rider, something similar. Mill for an additional 8. No, the lands are still returned to hand. He would have just had 2 extra cards in hand from Gush resolving, and then those 2 extra cards would have meant... Oh yeah, I guess... Yeah, I guess you're right. Because the Gush itself would have milled for 4, and then the Whirlpool Rider would have also milled for 4. I just meant off of the Whirlpool Rider, but obviously you're correct that both the Gush itself and the Whirlpool Rider would have meant a mill. Yeah, it's correct. It's 8 extra. Just the way that I phrased it was only referring to Whirlpool Rider, but in the grand scheme of things, Gush resolving would have meant another 8 mill. So limited power down to 12 cards in library here, after keeping this Whirlpool Rider engine a little bit lower, but at the same time unable to ever get these Traces erasers off of the board. Lightning Bolt to the face here really knows that he needs to close out this game quickly. This is game 1, yes, of the semifinals. So 1 power beatdown, trying to raise the 2 mill a turn off of Traces Erasure, plus any additional threatened mill off of cantrips. Limited power here, deciding to put down a ninja to get the maximum amount of damage in, even though drawing the extra card here is no longer that appealing. Really thinking about the fact whether he wanted to have red mana or blue mana available here. Decides that drawing into counter spell is more relevant than drawing into Lightning Bolt, because he can still bolt the following turn. Gets milled down to 8 off of these erasures, with close to lethal on board, but not quite, with the Whirlpool Rider still being able to block. Second Whirlpool Rider would be lethal, milling for exactly 8. No wait, milling for 4 only, never mind. Counterspell comes down, trying to stop it. Deprive not only makes the Whirlpool Rider resolve, but also return a land to hand to get the extra draw here, but this is only a mill for 4, putting limited power down to 4 cards in his library. All the creatures are swinging in. Double jump blocks these augurs and lets the ninja connect to get the extra draw. Very close game here for sure. So now James B goes to 3. The ninja draws a card to put limited power down to 3 in library. Orgraf Bolas looks at all 3 of these cards. So now literally look at the bottom 3 cards of your library as the joke goes. Chooses to not take any card, which I would advise even if you do find a card. Traces Erasures down to 1 card in library. No, 0 cards now. 0 cards in library. No, wait, 1. Yeah, 1, and then draw step 0. Now an empty library. Attacks for the threat of lethal. This ninja can come in as well, because as soon as the ninja has connected, the draw trigger goes on the deck, but the game ends before limited power would draw from an empty library. So pretty sick finish to this game. James B loses the game while limited power has exactly 0 cards in his library, and would have died the next time he had to draw a card. You don't have to draw? Is it? I don't think so. Is it really? Yeah. I guess he chose to not draw the previous turn. Oh yeah, it is a May ability. Okay, I think he might have chosen to not draw the previous turn. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was not a May ability, but you're correct. Yeah, I think he chose to not draw on the previous. Then he probably should have double blocked the ninja, right? Let me go back for a second. This is 36. Like at the point where he double blocked the augurs, he could have double blocked the ninja. I guess that, yeah, that might have helped, right? I go back there. So this is the turn. Yeah, and I think both of us made that mistake, like me and James B, because this block doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, I was wondering why the library sizes were this way. So we see James B like double jump blocking here. This prevents 2 damage and takes 3. The double block on the ninja also prevents 2 damage and takes 3. But then the ninja is no longer on the board, so there's less damage available next turn. So that was just like strictly better, right? Assuming there's no mandatory ninja trigger. If there's a mandatory ninja trigger, this makes sense, because limited power would draw 1 card down to 3. Then 2 of the erasures have a zero card library and then would die. That is true, it has a chance of messing up, but you have a chance of stabilizing the board. If you double block here, you go to, I guess you go to 2, it's difficult to ever stabilize there. Echoing Truth can help, but I think the Echoing Truth was already in the graveyard, so I guess there's no reason to do that. Yeah, I guess this is probably correct if you no longer have Echoing Truth. And if you do have Echoing Truth, you can double block here, and then Echoing Truth these augurs to stay alive at 1. That might be a little bit better. Okay, so yeah, he gave his opponent the chance to mess up with the ninja trigger. Limited power declines the ninja draw, very important, and then manages to win with 0 cards in library, so even more close. And yeah, so here Echoing Truth after this ninja got traded off would have stabilized, but it was already in the graveyard, so there was no reason for James B to try that. Kind of just had to top deck any card that drew him an extra card to get another erasure trigger for the win. No, he was tapped out though. I guess, yeah, you can try to Echoing Truth your ninja. Echoing Truthing the Welpu Rider. Yeah, that's probably just better. You're probably right. Yeah. Okay, so game 2 of this matchup. Now we have limited power on top and James B on the bottom once again. Is willing to preordain on turn 1, so maybe he needs some lands or doesn't have a Jace's Erasure in his hand yet. We saw him still trying to utilize the mill game plan even in the post-board games. In his quarterfinal match, I think boarding in some number of extra flyers, but still with an intact mill game plan, and end of turn spells that is right. Kind of surprising to me. Also missing land drops, so pretty weird draw by James B, having spellstutters in his own deck and running them out for aggression, though I assume there's a second spellstutter in the hand now. If he's willing to do this, yeah, we see second spellstutter coming down trying to attempt to stop the opposing spellstutter. Lightning bolts disrupt that. And yeah, this game is kind of spiraling out of control for James B, who is trading hits with spellstutter against spellstutter, but the ninja comes down now. There's red mana available to stop an opposing ninja or something. Snap, Pyroblast to stop the snap. And James B now in jump block mode to stop this ninja hit, so very weak draw. Well, what the hell? Keeps ninja back on keeps spellstutter back on defense to stop the ninja, but then still decides to not block. That is just completely inconsistent. Either you do block to stop the draw and throw your spellstutter away, which is not a great place to be, but it makes some sense, or you just attack with your spellstutter, which is also not a great place to be, but you get the 1 extra damage in. And here, just keeping the spellstutter back on defense and then not blocking just made no sense whatsoever. Just very inconsistent line of play. Thought Scouring just to get the extra card. Now the spellstutter is back to attacking, so James B just missing 1 point of damage for no real value. Now the spellstutter does get lightning bolted down. Also kind of a weird lightning bolt timing to do it at end of turn. After taking the 1 damage, though it makes a little bit more sense out of limited powers perspective, because it plays around Ninja. You could theoretically lightning bolt this Blaster at beginning of combat, but also it's possible that limited power just has another Pyroblast in hand and wanted to have the red mana available. No, they don't play Mutagenic Growth, or at least he didn't in any of the previous versions. I don't think there's anything he could have bluffed that I'm aware of. It's possible that he wanted to entice limited power into bolting it, so that limited power gets the ninja hit in, but that still just seems like a mistake. Yeah, it was just pretty weird. So limited power decided to bolt it at end of turn after taking the 1 damage, still getting it off of the board, and then James B tries to bounce the ninja here, but the snap gets dispelled, so more ninja connections on the face. So much card advantage. James B still behind on mana development. Gets his preordained spell started here, once again keeping open double red, which is kinda unusual. So very much a read on limited power having at least a Pyroblast in hand, maybe even a Pyroblast plus another burn spell. Jace's Erasure comes down, Brainstorm to trigger it, and there's the Pyroblast to take the Jace's Erasure off of the board in response. So the mill plan seems to not be working out, and once again a ton of damage coming in plus a ninja trigger. Well, maybe not a ton of damage, but like limited power is slowly building a board and manages to counter all these erasures, so James B not really making any progress while going through a stack with the cantrips, just looking for more backup, but constantly taking damage, falling behind on card advantage, and the erasure game plan is being disrupted. So I feel like this is the way that the matchup should usually play out from Blue-Red Delver. In the post-board games, you just draw some Pyroblast and completely tempo out your opponent. And here, Delver being committed to the board. Once again, Delver looking pretty embarrassing here as a hope to jump block a ninja or hope to transform it and be able to hold off your opponent's spells to the sprite. Not trading favorably with the spread. The spells to the sprite is supposed to save the Delver. Gets counterspelled though, so both of the creatures are gone. And then bolt to close out the game. And limited power wins the semifinals. Now we have Condescend against Fren MTG, which is once again the mono blue Delver against Tribe matchup that we saw Fren MTG already play in the quarterfinals. Yeah, Kraken Hatchling would be a lot better for James B than Delver Secret. Isn't even Fogbank a common? Maybe Fogbank is just an uncommon. But there has to be something better. I guess Fogbank was always an uncommon. Let's see. Converted mana cost less than 3. And toughness more than 2. And flying is what we want, right? As a blue common. To see if there's some kind of good common blocker that you could use. I mean, good blocker, good flying blocker that you can use. There's a 1 mana 0/2 flying. Aven Envoy. Even Aven Envoy would be better. Consulate Skygate looks great. I'm a huge fan of Consulate Skygate. You can play Floodbringer, Hovermere, Mist Intruder. Mist Intruder even mills your opponent and it doesn't die to Pyroblast. That's sick, sick, sick. Though it does cost 2. Mist Intruder. Ornithopter. See the value, 0 mana Ornithopter as a blocker. Sea Coast Drake is a 1/3 all the value. Golem's main. Yeah, Golem's main. I already added a second Golem main when I played the deck. Yeah, Augurs are obviously the best blockers in the format, but they don't fly, so if you really value flying, then yeah, I think the Delver of Secrets in that deck might actually be worse than Ornithopters, at least for the main game plan, but I get the aspect of it that if you transition into a more creature beatdown deck after sideboarding, you kind of need to have those extra slots available, and then once you become more creature heavy, the Delvers do have a purpose. They go well with the fairy plan. They enable your ninjas, they apply pressure, so the Drake is thick and indeed. So it makes sense that you want to like preserve slots because you only have 15 sideboard slots to really transition with. So unless some of those backup plan cards are in your main deck, you can't really afford to have enough of those cards. Fathom Seer, yeah, Fathom Seer is also gas. Like I get why the Delvers are there. They're just pretty bad in game ones, but you need to have some of your cards in the some of the fairy package in the main deck. I still feel like the fairy miscreants would even be better because they occasionally draw your card. But yeah, let's go back to this. We have Condescend against Fran MTG in our second semifinals. Tireless Tribe against Mono Bull Delver. Autograph Ball is coming down, getting Spell Stuttered. Pretty huge blowout, though getting Spell Stutter out of the Delver player's hand is something that Tribe is interested in because Spell Stutter is just so difficult to beat. And Fran MTG has a pretty slow follow-up turn here with just cantrips, though we had already discussed that presumably Fran MTG has no access to Ninja of the Deep Powers. So in this type of board position, there's just less pressure coming out. Spire Golem, Gush, Fairy Miscreant. Once again, Fran MTG really values casting Gush aggressively. Oh damn it. Yeah, the OBS mute button and the VLC pause and unpause the video button are like the same, but I wanted to jump back in the match anyways. I hope I wasn't muted for too long. So yeah, we see Fran MTG very aggressively building a board every time. Spiral Golem, Gush, second Fairy Miscreant. Like a huge lead on the board here in terms of flyers, and Condescend really needs to make something happen on this turn. Get a Tribe on the board while the opponent is tapped out. Goes Preordain, Gush, Shadow Rift, like a ton of cantrips here, but does not manage to find white mana plus Tribe, so very uneventful turn here by Condescend and just way too far behind in terms of board development, and also now set himself behind with the Gush. So limited to only 2 lands. Presumably already has a white source in hand now that the Evolving Wild scrapped another island, but just terrible position here. I guess the Ash Barrens was scrapping the plains. Second Shadow Rift on the Augur, another Preordain, just desperately looking for a Tribe. Does not manage to find the Tribe and just dies in a game without ever doing much. Just got ran over by a curve of flyers, and there wasn't even much interaction from Fran MTG. One Spellstutter took 1 cantrip, but other than that, just like curving out with creatures, and Condescend had a draw that was just not coming up with any action. So game 2, Condescend on top, Fran MTG on the bottom now. Keep switching back and forth. And no 1-drop for Fran MTG here, making it a lot more difficult to put on any pressure. Brainstorm into Tribe, so Condescend this time gets to resolve an early Tribe and immediately put friend MTG into a scary position, though Vapor Snake gets to try back to hand. So friend MTG losing out on a little bit of card advantage there, but delays the point at which a combo can be threatened. And Condescend deep in the tank here, whether the Tireless type should be recast or not. Recasting it just runs it into Spellstutter Sprite. So Condescend decides to hold on to it for a turn here and potentially try and protect it with Circular Logic to stop the Spellstutter Sprite from countering. Pondering, still hasn't come up with a third land, I assume, or a fourth land, a third island. So now running all these cantrips out as bait for the Spellstutter Sprite. Friend MTG patiently holding onto the Spellstutter Sprite, assuming there is one, though considering how slow this draw was, it seems pretty unlikely that there's no Spellstutter. Like, there's no pressure on Friend MTG's side whatsoever, so he does need to have some kind of interaction. Either multiple counter spells and dispels with the bounce spell that we already saw, or just Spellstutter. And yeah, Spellstutter for Tireless Tribe is just very difficult to deal with. That's why these serrated arrows are rising in popularity so much, because they allow you to fight through all these Spellstutters, buy yourself time, make sure they don't get their triggered ability off. But yeah, just a very slow back and forth here, both players developing their mana. Condescend even holding on to this fetch land. I'm not certain if he still knew a card on top of his deck. I think so. He might have pondered top and then wanted to draw both of those cards, intentionally choosing to not shuffle with Evolving Wilds to find the second card. Though it does make it even more difficult to resolve a Tireless Tribe here if you don't have the Circular Logic backup available. So the card on top of Condescend's deck really had to be good for that to be worth it. Though he's also not under a lot of pressure here. Both players just staring at each other with a ton of reactive mana open. Finally the first creature of the game coming down. I guess the Tireless Tribe was the first creature. The first creature on this board is the Fairy Miscreant, opening up the pressure for Friend MTG, though we still know that it doesn't actually enable any Ninja of the Deep or follow-up, so it's a lot less scary here than it could be from other Delver decks. No idea why this is going slow. I'll speed it up a little bit to see if we can get back into the action. Okay, now finally fetching, getting a second plains, which is interesting. Usually you don't want a second plains, but maybe Condescend just has multiple Tireless Tribes in hand and wants to play them out in the same turn. Counterspell, so no Spellstutter immediately. Both players have a Dispel. And yeah, there's the second Tireless Tribe, so using that window of opportunity with the second plains to force a tribe onto the board, but as we had previously discussed, Friend MTG's version of this deck has a ton of bounce spells available. And immediately the Tireless Tribe gets snapped back to the hand while Condescend is tapped low, so that turn of fighting over Tireless Tribe ended up costing Friend MTG a card in the form of Snap, but not actually building a board for Condescend to combo with. Second Miscreant gets some of that card disadvantage back. Both players at a very similar card count in hand, though Friend MTG with the slightly better board position here, and slowly starting to beat down. I've sped it back up to full speed, though it seems like these replays just have a little bit of a variable speed. Tireless Tribe down again, another counter spell, so friend MTG still doesn't have access to Spell Stutter. Circular Logic Hardcast protects the tribe, and once again it just gets bounced. So Condescend up another card, down a ton of tempo, once again spending his entire turn and just getting Vapor Snack to start back from basically nothing. Stormbound Geist would stabilize this board but gets deprived. And these 1/1s are beating back in over and over, though Spiral Golem threatens to stabilize the board finally. Now there's a bigger flyer on Condescend's side of the board that these Fairy Miscreants can no longer attack into profitably. And there's also a threat of combo now with Tireless Tribe sticking on the board. Shadow Rift to potentially get it through. Even the Spiral Golem is attacking as well, but no combo on the Tireless Tribe, just getting the 1 damage in with the Shadow Rift and cycling through it. Follow-up Spiral Golem also resolves. That seemed a little bit sketchy to me, because I think you wanted to see if the Spiral Golem resolves before making your attacks. This looked a lot more threatening to the Delver opponent, because there was still a threat of Inside Out on the already Shadow Rifted Tireless Tribe. But this way, if the Spiral Golem gets countered, then you're just taking 5 damage on the backswing. And it is a little bit scary here. Delver transforms, you take 5 down to 8. Like another Vapor Snack already puts you to 7. Maybe that's alright with you, but I think just giving yourself the information whether the Spiral Golem resolves or not before you attack with the other Spiral Golem could have given you some more flexibility to make sure you don't lose to opposing aggression. I'm not certain if that was necessary, because in best case the Spiral Golem does resolve, then you can still make this attack and you don't really lose out on anything giving yourself that information. So I think I would have preferred Spiral Golem pre-combat. But yeah, it does resolve, and now Condescend in a pretty dominating board position with a bigger flying blocker and a nice flying attacker as well. Boomerang has been found off of the Augur, so once again we see friend MTG's heavy focus on having bounce spells available, though chooses to not bounce this Spiral Golem here. 3 damage just isn't enough out of a Boomerang. He can still use the Boomerang as counter protection, as combo protection, I mean, to make sure the Tireless Tribe doesn't combo kill him, and maybe build a board that is slightly bigger and then use Boomerang to get these Spiral Golems out of the way at a later point. Condescend is aware that he's still at a lower life total and needs at least one of these Spiral Golems back on defense, though 1 blocker against 1 Boomerang still is slightly scary, because Delver transforming and Boomerang on the Spiral Golem here can deal a lot of damage, as is the attempt here by friend MTG, but friend MTG fails to transform the Delver, basically just drawing an Augur. Vapor Snack, Inside Out in response to look for a counter, and Circular Logic coming down to stop this Vapor Snack. With the Vapor Snack resolving, both the Delver of Secrets and the Augur could attack as well. And yeah, we see that friend MTG manages to do that, just comes up with another Vapor Snack, just very, very heavy focus on bounce spells. Manages to get Tireless Tribe out of the way and attack for 4, but this Delver not transforming is a huge problem here for friend MTG. And what the hell? Once again, I don't really understand why Condescend is so aggressively attacking with this Spiral Golem here, because the opponent just like 2-for-1 himself to get a Tireless Tribe out of the board just to get like 2 extra damage in. So it's very apparent that friend MTG is desperate to deal the last few points of damage and doesn't really have anything going if the game goes long. And with the life totals being 15 against 8 in the previous turn, It seems pretty sketchy to me to attack with the Spiral Golem here, because then once again this transforms and you just attack for 5 down to 3. It's a pretty scary spot to be in. Then like even a Fairy Miscreant follow-up or something already provides friend MTG with lethal in the air through the Spiral Golem blocker. So I think I really would have liked the Spiral Golem to be sitting back. Kinda surprised that he attacked. But once again this Delver fails to transform and then he doesn't really get punished all that badly. If this was an attack for 5 instead of 2, then it could be game breaking that the Spiral Golem was not back on defense. And once again, very aggressively attacking, though now he manages to come up with a combo, and friend MTG's last card in hand is not a way to stop the combo, so Shadow Rift plus Inside Out does manage to get a kill. Was it though? I don't think so, because he still could attack. No, I don't think so. Because you could still attack with, like, he's still dealing 15 damage this turn, right? So keeping the opponent at 15 with a Spiral Golem still on the board is alright. And also the card count was high enough that you could easily deal 17 instead of 13. So sure, 13 is a breakpoint for a tribe combo that you need to discard one less card. It only requires you to discard 3 cards instead of requiring you to discard 4 cards. But I think Condescend both had enough cards available that it was alright to not deal the damage, and he also had a Spiral Golem attack available on this turn to make it 15. I can see the logic behind getting the damage in to make your Tireless Trap combo better, but I think at this point Condescend, if he manages to combo, he's going to win regardless. He still has 3 cards in hand at this point to work with, or maybe just... Yeah, I think he had 2 cards to discard still. I think it was... the mindset that you're describing is definitely what Condescend was trying to do. I just think it was incorrect. It led to the incorrect conclusion. Because the Spiral Golem would have still threatened damage the following turn. It was still the more difficult thing to do to resolve your combo than it was to have your combo do enough damage. There were still cards left in hand that he could have easily discarded. I think he had exactly enough cards to do 17 points of damage with a counter backup. Like 1 Dispel and then discard 4 cards to deal 17. So the attack was just unnecessarily putting himself into risk against another bounce spell. But yeah, Condescend does manage to come up with a win there, because the Delver of Secret does not transform for multiple turns in a row, and therefore friend MTG comes up a little bit short in the damage race. Definitely think Condescend put himself into a more dangerous position there than he needed to. With the Delver transforming earlier, there would have been a lot of trouble to these bounce spells. Delver turn 1 once again does not transform. Yeah, but he didn't have enough mana available to use both. Also, if he did have 2 counters available, he wouldn't have cycled through the Ash Barrens, I think. He just did that for like no real purpose on that combo turn, tapping 1 mana out. I'm not sure. And yeah, once again, the Spiral Golem can still attack on your combo turn, so it only really matters if your opponent is also jump blocking with the flyer. And even then you still have an extra turn that you can wait, because with Spiral Golem on defense you're taking 0 damage. With Spiral Golem attacking you're taking 5 damage, presumably. Like if the Delver transforms you're taking 5. So I think like you're just like putting yourself in a corner where you have to combo the following turn, and your combo has to come up with lethal, and not really giving yourself any extra outs. So I don't think that was actually correct. But yeah, it was an interesting spot. Definitely the damage breakpoints do often matter. And it maybe could have mattered against some different top decks that Friend MTG could have. But against the exact version that Friend MTG runs, I think it was not the best way to approach it, because it's only like bounce spell oriented. Okay, back to this game. Some cantripping going on. The white source has been found but is still in play tapped. The Delver has finally transformed. Augur comes down and reveals Counterspell, which is currently not castable. Condescend has an Augur on defense, which still doesn't deal with this Delver of Secrets. Reveals Dispel. But another tapped land here, so Dispel isn't even open yet. Not that you really want to dispel many things here. A bounce spell on the Augur does not seem that appealing to Friend MTG yet. Shadow Rift to cycle through it, most likely looking for a Tidal Stripe, because all the other pieces of the puzzle are already available here. Follows up with nothing. Another flyer. The Delver is doing a great job whittling Condescend's life total down. End of turn Ash Burns. Another Shadow Rift being cycled through, and a Brainstorm still looking for that tribe. And a Preordain. And a Ponder. Once again, a ton of cantripping going on here, and Condescend seems to be coming short of what he needs. It's possible that the Tireless Tribe is now in the hand, but he still wants to wait for Circular Logic protection to get through a potential Spellstutter Sprite, but under a lot of pressure here from the flyers and doesn't have a lot of turns left to set up a combo and then execute a combo. Stormbound Geist is what he found, so still no Tireless Tribe, but this is a great blocker to get the board under control, presumably, and Spiral Golem as well. So two profitable blockers. Vapor Snack deals with one of them. Vapor Snack wants to deal with the other one but gets dispelled, so Stormbound Geist gets to stick on the board. And Friend MTG has no favorable attacks, so Condescend seems to be stabilizing on 5 life here. And once again has 2 flying blockers, and now resolves a Serrated Arrow, so dominating position for Condescend here after being behind for quite a while, but could set up a pretty much perfect defensive hand with all these cantrips. And these Haymakers resolving here puts Friend MTG into a very difficult position. Not using the arrows yet, playing around a potential extra flyer so that a ninja could be put into play off of Spellstutter Sprite, for example. Still no profitable attacks here for Friend MTG, and these serrated arrows can now start whittling down the flyers, choosing to shoot down the Delver of Secrets with 2 of these arrow counters to get the biggest and most scary threat off of the board, though there's still 2 flying blockers available for it, but just a good defensive move to make sure that there's no combination of bounce spells getting these flyers out of the way, and then Delver connects and flies in for the win. Cycling through Inside Out, no longer really invested into finding a combo here, because these serrated arrows plus flyers can really grind out the game, and just finding extra Stormbound Geists and Spiral Golems is a good way for Condescend to make his position even safer and keep grinding Friend MTG out. So it seems like a very difficult position here for Friend MTG, who's also flooding out. You never want to hit 7 islands in play with the mono blue Delver deck, really looking to aggressively gush them back to your hand and also just draw a lower amount of lands in total. There's the second Stormbound Geist and the Gush, though Gush gets dispelled. Now both players have Spiral Golems on the board, so kind of in a board stall in terms of flyers. Condescend could theoretically start attacking with these Stormbound Geists into the opposing Spiral Golem and then either shrink the Spiral Golem a little bit with the arrow counter, or let one of these Stormbound Geists die and then get it back as a 3/3 to get even more profitable blockers and attackers. Though the low life total on Condescend's side, that was very interesting as well. The low life total on Condescend's side makes him unwilling to attack, and trading damage is not really in his interest. The interesting part here was second Fairy Miscreant came down, there's an untapped arrows here, and Condescend chose to not use the arrows, which could have disrupted Fairy Miscreant's trigger and just kills a 1/1 and denies Friend MTG a card. So very surprised that that didn't happen. Yeah, I think he should have just arrows the fairies for sure. Theoretically, having the arrows available can whittle down some of the bigger creatures, help against the Spire Golem, so that you can start attacking into it later on. Also, importantly, it stops Delver of Secrets, so if Condescend is really afraid of Delver of Secrets, he could hold on to the counter to kill that before it transforms. But I think denying a card and killing a 1/1 flyer is just much stronger than playing it that passively and that like in such a paranoid manner. With 3 profitable blockers for Delver available already. Yeah, I think he definitely was worried about Delver, but I think that was also a mistake. Because this board is great at blocking Delver, and then like denying a card draw is already worth more. The only other explanation I could see is that he has Core Skyfisher in his deck somewhere and wants to use the arrows on his main phase, then Core Skyfisher the arrows back to his hand and replay them. But I think from what I saw out of Condescend's deck list previously, I don't think he has Core Skyfishers. So I think I definitely would have chosen to kill the fairies here, and this allows Friend MTG to draw into a Gush, and the Gush draws into more cards, so now actually in a much more comfortable position here in terms of card advantage, even though he's still far behind on the board. Yeah, the arrows Geist combo is definitely not relevant. These Geists are like never going to die twice. It's just way too much of an investment to try and like triple block down Stormborn Geists to kill them and then run them into arrows and all that. I don't think that's like something you need to hold on to. These guys are already the king of the skies. They're either getting bounced or they're going to dominate the skies. So yeah, both players back to sitting here kind of at board parity. Condescend obviously ahead on the board with the better flyers and the arrows, though unable to attack here. Now Gush comes down, Delver of Secrets to follow up, so assuming Condescend wanted to hold these arrow counters for Delvers, this is his moment to shoot down the Delver, though on his own turn is preferable, of course, to enable Core Skyfisher. If you use the arrows here on your opponent's turn, you just lose them on upkeep. If you use them main phase, it's strictly better. So Condescend still deciding not to use these arrows, so that's very confusing to me, because now these Delvers just transform. So he chose to not kill a 1/1 that draws a card, like a 1/1 that only draws a card if you don't use your arrows, and also chose to not kill a full Delver of Secrets. So I'm not certain what Condescend would ever hope for these arrows to do. I think Ghostly Flicker and Core Skyfisher are like the only reasonable explanations for such a defensive line of play where you want to hold on to them forever, but both of the applications that Condescend had access to seemed better than what he actually did. This looks like he just gave Friend MTG many chances back into this game that were unnecessary and could have been prevented. The Fairy Miscreant into Gush chain. Yeah, but killing Spellstutter doesn't really... Like, whether you're killing a Fairy Miscreant and he has 2 fairies on the board, or killing a Spellstutter and he has 2 fairies on the board, it doesn't really matter. Like, it counts all fairies, not just Spellstutters. So, usually you want to hold Serrated Arrows to disrupt Spellstutter, but killing the Miscreant would have equally disrupted the Spellstutter. So unless you have like a way to get multiple small creatures off the board at the same time, like a Holy Light or something, I don't think holding the counter and not killing the Miscreant is actually more useful against Spellstutter. Like, this counter is only going to kill one fairy regardless of when you use it. So why not kill the fairy that draws a card instead of the fairy that just doesn't have any extra effect? The Spellstutter trigger is going to happen regardless, and it will count all fairies regardless. So I think Holy Light, Core Skyfisher, Ghostly Flicker are like the only explanations that I do have. I think it's more likely that Condescend just made a mistake and misevaluated how these arrow counters should be used. But if I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, I would say Core Skyfisher top decks that he was waiting for. Cycling through Shadow Rift, once again not really focusing on the combo anymore, though he does need to start winning the game at some point. Just sitting here forever in a position that is forever going to be defensive is not that great. Then you're looking to draw like your second Spire Golem and your second Serrated Arrows to finally start whittling down this board. But really forced into a defensive position here, and that allowed Fran MTG to chain multiple gushes into each other, got the card draw out of Miscreant, and just has a full hand of 7 cards here against Condescend's 7 cards as well. But with Condescend being at such a lower life total, it is still pretty threatening, because at some point there should be bounce spells to get an attack through. And yeah, this Delver being on the board and offering a ton of damage potential is very important here. Extra Augur after Brainstorm reveals Ponder. So Condescend once again back to cantripping a bunch, but is almost tapped out here. Only 1 mana still available after Brainstorm into Fetchland, into Augur of Bolas, into Ponder. Spellstutter tries to counter this Ponder, and the arrows don't even disrupt this because there's 3 fairies on the board. Though Condescend is obviously aware of that. Did not like fight over the Spellstutter at all. So there's Snap on one of the flyers, Vapor Snack on one of the flyers, Circular Logic coming down to counter the Vapor Snack. Dispel on the Circular Logic, so Vapor Snack resolves, now he's at 4, and then Lethal Attack in the air, and Condescend managed to successfully throw this game away with Serrated Arrows and a dominating position of flyers. Just tapped down way too low, all the flyers got bounced, the Serrated Arrows were not used in many spots where they could have been used, and I think Condescend rightfully lost this game. It's possible he would have still lost the game if he played it better and more defensively, keeping more mana available here and using the arrows in an earlier spot, but like never made any progress on the board, just managed to stall it out, and then Fran MTG could just sit there and scalp the perfect hand of all bounce spells until Condescend finally blinked and tapped down too much mana and then just pounced on him and killed him. So very nicely played by Fran MTG. Kinda badly played by Condescend, though he was in a tough position after falling to such a low life total early on regardless. So it was difficult to go from being in a constant defensive mode to a constant aggressive, or like turning it into any form of aggression. And here we can even see, rewinding just a tiny bit, I recorded it on Sunday. Basically after my own stream I looked at the replays and recorded it with OBS, so I now have the recording of these replays on my hard drive. I was intending to do it as a stream on Sunday, but I was like way too drained after my own tournament, so I decided why not just collect the video footage and then talk over it when I'm a little bit more relaxed, and yeah, that's basically what I'm doing now. I just looked through all these replays and haven't really paid attention to them the first time around, but I have seen some excerpts of the game before. But yeah, I have the video available to me and I'm replaying it back now. This is just not actually Magic Online, this is just a VLC video player with the recording of Magic Online. yeah, it's no longer available on Magic Online. The tournaments go away very quickly. I think within 24 hours of the tournament beginning is when they disappear. So you need to make sure to grab those videos pretty much right away. Yeah, I think like 24 hours is how long they're available. I've already talked to Lee Sharp about making them available for a longer time. I asked him multiple times to please do that. Please make like challenges and moxes and PTQs available to the general public, even if you weren't in the tournament. But they're worried about like bots data mining those events if they're available publicly. But then you could cover events that you're not in yourself as well. And also making them available for longer so that I could, or like other content creators as well, could just talk over them more freely and highlight all the awesome games that happen on Magic Online. Yeah, I was intending to do it more often. It's just pretty annoying that you basically have to do it. Like for me, the tournament finishes at like 3 a.m. So I have to do like 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. record videos or even do the stream then. So it's not very convenient to me, but I think the recording and talk over it somewhere later in the week is actually pretty doable for me. And yeah, play by play. Yeah, I don't know. I like a little bit more analyzing rather than just play by play, but it's pretty close to what I'm doing. You can focus more on play by play, though I think these replays you would also have to slow them down a little bit more to be able to keep up with them, especially if you want to analyze things and do play by play. But yeah, I'm interested in like comment. Oh yeah, this was the spot that I wanted to highlight. Wait. So we see Condescend did not block here because he was dead on board. And I'm basically just doing this and jobbing at the moment. I'm kind of a student, but not really focusing on my studies at the moment, so kind of just doing Magic more or less full time, but obviously not a sustainable career yet. Just doing this out of like interest in doing it, and maybe it goes somewhere in the future, maybe it doesn't, and then I'll have to reevaluate. I finished a bachelor's degree in economics before then, but I haven't really turned that into any serious career yet. Should start coaching. Yeah, I could look into that. If there's interest in coaching, I would be willing to offer it for sure. And yeah, this is definitely going up on YouTube. That was my plan. I usually just upload anything worth highlighting that I streamed onto my YouTube. So the entire thing is definitely going up on YouTube as well, yes. So this bot, Condescend chose to not block and goes to -4. Assuming this arrows would have shut down the Delver, that was -1, and then Stormbound guys could jump block Spiral Golem here, so he would take 3 damage down to plus like 1 life, and stabilize at 1 life here, and then recast Stormbound guys, recast Spiral Golem, and there was a chance that Condescend would actually survive here, assuming this trade would have happened, arrows against Delver, and this block would have happened, so that would actually not a lethal attack yet. And yeah, and it's more difficult to evaluate how the serrated arrows on Fairy Miscreant would have worked out, because just slows down all the development of Fran MTG. The first gush would have come later, and then the second gush also comes later because they like delay each other by not chaining into each other as quickly. But yeah, definitely this killing the Delver of Secrets before it transforms would have been immensely helpful and made sure that he just doesn't die on this board yet. There needed to be another bounce spell or another flying attacker or something else. Yeah, that sounds interesting, Infinity. I'll let you, actually I'll do like, there's like friending on Twitch or something, right? I'll add friend and then send you a message soon after the stream to discuss that. Definitely sounds interesting. Yeah, I do need to invest in like better equipment. Also, I'm not that artistically inclined with like the whole overlay thing and all that, but maybe I need to just contact someone who's a professional in that and let them make a tailor-made overlay for me. Yeah, I think like being able to talk about my thought process is definitely my biggest strength. So trying to utilize that as much as possible, for sure. But yeah, the technical side of my stream and even my way of talking and being more engaging, and that is definitely something I can still work on. Okay, so time for the finals. We saw Friend MTG overrunning the stronger defenses of Condescend there with multiple flyers and multiple bounce spells, and now Friend MTG on Mono Blue Delver gets to face up against limited power on Blue Red Delver. And Delver of Secrets, the namesake card of these decks, coming down on turn 1, while limited power only comes up with a Ponder, so immediately falling behind on the board. And Delver of Secrets transforming with a Gush, and this is actually one of my favorite parts of the tournament. I've already seen this before. Oh no, I guess next turn, yeah. Next turn is where it comes up. Delver, second Delver here, and Fairy Miscreant, so applying a ton of pressure here, going wide on the board with multiple cheap creatures, and limited power is stuck playing defense. And I think this is it. Delver of Secrets once again transforms right away with a second Gush. And he gushes on his turn 3, plays a Spellstutter Sprite on his own main phase. This was, I have no idea whether this is correct or not, but it was incredibly, I would say, impressive to me. At least it was like surprising to me for sure, because I know that if I was in Friend MTG's spot, there was a 0% chance I would have made this play. He gushed on his main phase and played a Spellstutter Sprite for no value. I don't think I could have ever brought myself to make that play. I would have just passed with like 2 mana open and Spellstutter Sprite in hand, tried to counter your opponents like Miscreant or Delver, or get another Lightning Bolt or Scrat out of my opponent's hand by Spellstuttering it, and then maybe waited a turn on the Gush or something. I assume Friend MTG didn't have a land drop here and wanted to Gush for that land drop, but then using both of the floating mana to just run out Spellstutter while you're sure that it resolves, and willingly not getting any value out of it, was very unintuitive to me as someone who likes to maximize my value out of cards. But then again, if you consider the matchup and that this is game 1, it's very difficult for Blue Red Delver to catch up on the board here, because they most likely only have 1 red source available, so they can only bolt or scrat down one of these 3. So they're still behind there. And also they didn't play a creature in the early turns, so it's difficult for them to come up with blockers. Most likely their blockers are just Augur of Bolas or something. Maybe they have some Ninja of the Deep R stuck in their hand. So if you force your blue-red Delver opponent into such a defensive position where they have to deal with multiple small creatures at the same time, it's very difficult for them to catch up to you again. And this Spellstutter main phase might actually be just genius, though I wouldn't have come up with it on my own without significant testing of the matchup, and I could actually see this just being like a higher understanding of how the matchup works, though it does look very unintuitive to me, and it does give up some potential value. If your opponent tries to scrap the Delver and you can protect it with Spellstutter, that would have also offered a huge potential payoff, but also a lot more risk attached to it. So yeah, just probably the most interesting moment of the top 8 for me. We saw in the quarterfinals some plays that just looked like misclicks or something, but this actually looks like Friend MTG intended to do this and understands that his role in the matchup is to be highly aggressive here and just flood the board with many small threats that are difficult to fight through. Though in the post-board games this applies a little bit less, because then Blue-Red Delver gets access to Electricity, and these types of go wide game plans where you give up value to have multiple small things on board become a lot more risky. But in game 1 it actually seems very interesting to do this and could potentially just be great. So we'll see how it works out, but it was definitely a play that was very surprising to me and impressed me quite a bit. And yeah, in the late game, blue-red is definitely favored because we have more card advantage engine there with the ninjas that Friend MTG doesn't have, and the removal spells actually kill opposing creatures, while Friend MTG's removal of swords is just bounce spells. So you fall behind there. And once again, very interesting, limited power also respecting his opponent's ability to go wide on the board and flashes in a spellstutter for no value of his own, while Friend MTG only had 1 mana available. Plays spellstutter as a 2 mana 1/1 flying blocker, no value out of the trigger, and then the spellstutter gets Vapor Snack back to the hand actually, so another play that gives up a ton of value, giving your opponent the potentially strong spellstutter back to hand that the trigger can still get some value later on, but you're just immediately seizing control of the board and trying to punish your blue-red opponent for their clunky draw. And as we see here, like, third Delver gets 2 damage in here, the Vapor Snack on the spellstutter, making limited power unable to block, and also pretty interesting that Augur comes down here instead of the spellstutter, so once again no flying blocker available. Limited power knows that he really has to find another lightning bolt or scrap to get this Delver off of the board, and limited power just forced into a very uncomfortable position here by Friend MTG's very aggressive approach to going wide on the board and just having air superiority. Delver transforms again right away, Brainstorm revealed. We know there's another Gush in the hand from the second Delver reveal, as far as I know, so Friend MTG won't even really run out of card advantage here while doing these highly aggressive plays. Yeah, that's also true. You can snag your own creatures theoretically, though it really looks like Friend MTG wants to only snag opposing creatures and really abuse the fact that limited power is too clunky and takes too long to get the board back under control. Like here, this Augur isn't doing anything, there's lethal on the board now on turn 5 already into open protective mana by Friend MTG. So yeah, really impressive and highly aggressive line of play that I don't think I would have found if I was in his shoes. And it's an interesting view on the deck to play it this aggressively, basically. Though it's kind of surprising to me that he plays this deck so aggressively but then has no mutagenic growth, because the playstyle that he went for is highly supported by mutagenic growth. It makes you stronger against like opposing lightning bolts in a spot like this. When your Delver gets bolted, you could just mutagenic growth and attack for 5 with it. This is just one example, but if you're going this aggressively, both the Lava Spike for 0 mana mode of mutagenic growth and the protect your creatures while you're aggressively tapping out for them mode of mutagenic growth can both be very valuable. Can allow you to attack into bigger creatures at some point, but yeah, Friend MTG just really valuing bounce spells to get blockers out of the way entirely instead of attacking into them and then having a combat trick, which I can also respect. So yeah, there's the bolt attempting to stabilize the board, counterspell, second bolt, so limited power does manage to have multiple answers here and still keep himself alive. But this spellstutter has already paid huge dividends. Gush comes down once again, going from 2 lands to 0, then back up to 1. Very aggressively looking for more pressure, like a second Miscreant or the 4th Delver. Really looking for more stuff to put onto the board to keep overrunning. And once again, main phase spellstutter Sprite to make sure that it resolves through a counterspell. And once again, Vapor Snack on the spellstutter Sprite. And yeah, limited power store just was way too clunky, even with 4 red removal spells for 1 mana, killing Delver of Secrets. Friend MTG just managed to always be ahead and get, what was it, like 6 damage in with this, and then 4 or 5 damage with the spellstutter. So just great utilization by the early advantage and snowballing that to the win. Very impressive. That's also true if you don't have mutagenic. That forces you into playing even more aggressively, because you can't fight through burn spells as well as you would with mutagenic growth, and you're never winning a value game if your deck is full of bounce spells. But yeah, just a slightly different style than you see from all the other Java decks, and we still haven't seen a Ninja of the Deep Hour, so I really think Fran MTG was playing none of those and just has a mix of Spiral Golems and Augurs to just be all pressure all the time, and he seems to not want to bounce his creatures back to hand. He just wants to keep all the flyers on the board at all times and keep applying pressure with them instead of bouncing them to the hand for, like, you only get one extra card out of the deal, but then you're setting yourself behind at the same time. Miscreant being bolted right away before it can be protected by Spellstitcher. Augur coming down as a follow-up. So Augur is like the only non-flying creature of the deck, and obviously does a great job of generating the card advantage to keep coming up with more bounce, and also protects from like edict effects and allows you to race with all of your flyers because you have an efficient blocker on the ground. First Augur revealed Gush once again, if I saw correctly. Second one reveals Counterspell, and able to attack into the Stormbound Geist now because these non-flying creatures can't be blocked by it. So yeah, very interesting that an otherwise pretty blue-red favorite matchup, I think, seems to be handled very well by how Fran MTG approaches it. Stormbound Geist attacking here. Seems like limited powers considering a ninja or no ninja. Neither of them really leave him in a great spot on the board. The ninja just runs into Augurs in the near future and sets a very important spell back to his hand. So these are like the type of plays where you are very unhappy to have ninja in your deck. You can still choose to not do it, of course, but the Stormbound Geist is also not doing great here. It currently doesn't block anything, though it will block many things in the future. And then Stormbound Geist is a 3-mana card, is actually a huge liability against this Vapor Snag focus. Vapor Snag is actually better here than a Lightning Bolt would be, and usually that's the other way around, where blue-red has the superior removal spells. Gush into, yeah, there we can see like Gush into Delver into Vapor Snag. Now you have a clunky 3-mana card stuck in your hand that is like a huge liability to get back onto the board, but you kind of do need to recast it at some point to keep the flyers from hitting you, so very interesting. Like, as I said, usually blue-red's removal is better. You have Pyroblast, Lightning Bolt, Scrat, all of those kill your opponent's creatures, and bouncing them is usually worse because it ends up being card disadvantage in the long run. But here bouncing a Stormbound Geist is just way better, because it doesn't come back with Undying, and it's a huge tempo loss to have to recast it. So very, very interesting. Speed it up a little bit. And yeah, Fran MTG now has open mana available to protect this Delver, maybe stop the Stormbound Geist from resolving. And yeah, just very comfortably ahead on the board. Far behind in terms of land drops once again because of the aggressive Gush usage, but pretty dominating board position other than that. And limited power seems to not even be willing to cast the Stormbound Geist again into open counterspell mana. So unlikely to have access to a Dispel or a Pyroblast because each of those could protect the Stormbound Geist. And Spellstutter end of turn again even allows limited power to scratch the Delver instead of holding the Spellstutter Sprite for protection. Ends up with a similar amount of pressure on the board here, but gave up on that Spellstutter Sprite protective ability, so once again, pretty unintuitive line of play to allow your opponent to do that, but once again, pretty comfortably ahead on the board. Very, very interesting approach. And also, once again, something that if I just picked this deck up and tried to play it, there was a 0% chance I would have chosen those lines of plays that Friend MTG chose. But he did 10-0 with the deck, so a lot of credit to him. And limited power is forced into like a defensive spell stutter here. Does not do that in combat, so taking 1 extra damage from opposing spell stutter, but also gives up on the value just to be able to play defense. Yeah, no ninja. I assumed so, because we saw 3 full matches and there never was a ninja. I think it's just like Augur plus Spire Golem, right? 16 lands, or maybe just Augur no Spire Golem, and Spire Golem's out of the sideboard. And like limited power getting the ninja hit in here, but it's such a huge tempo loss. Like there's Stormbound guys still stuck in the hand, there's ninja now on the board that doesn't play defense at all. Like you can see that Friend MTG just abuses these tempo losses and says like, sure, you get to ninja me, but I'm ahead on the board. Once again, Spellstutter for no value. And opposing Spellstutter also for no value just to have a 1/1 blocker. It's pretty insane, though this approach is pretty weak to Electrickery, I feel. Could have easily gotten 2 for 1 there. Am I a fan of the ninja? I used to be, though I don't really play much Delver either way. But this no ninja approach actually looks pretty nice and innovative here. It is good, but I can see the appeal of this more tempo-oriented version where you never set yourself back with ninja, because the entire metagame around you is set up to deal with ninja. Like everyone expects a ninja, people hold up removal for it when it comes down, people hold blockers back. Like everyone just tries to never get hit by a ninja, and then if you just make them scared and never have it, it's pretty nice. Very interesting approach in both deck building and playstyle. Yeah, and it does allow you to just abuse your opponent's tempo so much if they are scared of a card that is never there, though that effect goes away pretty quickly. If you keep playing the same deck list every week and people catch on to the fact that you don't have any ninjas, then it loses some of its efficiency, though the tempo plan is still there, but the fact that people have to respect it goes away. That's also true, they might still be there, I just can't see them. They're just better ninjas than the usual ninjas. These ninjas can be seen, so they're clearly amateurs. Okay, so counterspell fight over the Stormbound guys. Once again, limited power has to commit 3 mana there, just try and get it onto the board, and still fails to do that. So his 5 mana worth of investment got countered by 3 mana from limited power, though limited power, Friend MTG now also resolves the Stormbound Geist. Pyroblast comes a little bit late to the party, now that the Stormbound Geist is already on the board. The ninja being embarrassingly bad here against Augurs, that's the huge downside. Like, opponents having Core Skyfishers and Augur of Bolas, it's so difficult to get a second ninja hit in. The first ninja hit is pretty easy, it's a tempo loss, but it usually happens. And then the second ninja hit, just, if it never happens, then you're not getting much card advantage out of the ninja. And here, look at this ninja on the board, it just doesn't do anything. It's about as embarrassing as Delver of Secrets in the Mill Delver. Spellstutter Sprite is a blocker coming down once again. These have been like the most disappointing Spellstutter Sprites I've ever seen from both sides, though both of them are probably correct to do it this way, because they need to stop each other from building too big of a board. Just pretty funny that Spellstutter value so rarely happens in a matchup where both decks are filled with a ton of 1 mana cards. No, usually they're very quick. I think this week the decklist page is just bugged out and it doesn't happen at the normal pace. Second ninja being hard cast. Not even certain if that was worth fighting over from Friend MTG's perspective, though it does resolve after the Pyroblast, and now limited power is about in as terrible of a board position as he was before, now with 2 ninjas, which are still embarrassing against 2 Augurs. Scrat tries to get the air back under control, counterspell, and the game has ended. Friend MTG has won the finals and managed to 10-0 the tournament. as we can see here in a second, as soon as Past Me returns to the screen. So beat Blue Red Delver in the finals 2-0, beat Tribe in the semifinals 2-1, beat Tribe in the quarterfinals 2-0, and other than that, a pretty dominating run through the Swiss as well. We see him playing against Limited Power in the final round of Swiss, against Nullian, who was on Blue Red Delver as well, here in the 6th round. Condescend, so another Tribe, and then a bunch of other people here. I think Blastoise was also on Delver, so Friend MTG just cutting himself through all the Delver mirrors in this challenge. Played at least 5 Delver mirrors, maybe more. So his approach to the matchup, highly focusing on tempo and giving up on the ninjas in general and giving up on card advantage for temporary air control, seemed to have been working out incredibly well for him. Very interesting approach, and looking forward to seeing the deck list as well.